Welcome to part 2 of Nuclear Dragon. If you encounter any issues or have feedback, please let me know in the comments rather than just disliking the video. Your input helps me improve, and I'm here to make sure you have the best experience possible. Enjoy the content.
Part 1, Chapter 126. Shillong felt the breath of conspiracy, but they all excluded the kingdom. The reason is simple. They didn't really turn their faces with each other. These guys are also counting on the Soderbergh Chamber of Commerce to provide a large tax at the end of the year. What do you think of this incident? Shillong asked. There is no clue at all, and it seems that I haven't offended anyone recently. Andre said helplessly. I met a killer before, and he was level 17. Now I've encountered someone who disrupted the transport of our movies. Is this a competitor? Do you think we have any strong competitors? Can hire 17-class killers and powerful mercenaries to defeat our mercenaries? The financial resources must be very strong. Shillong analysis. Please use a 17th level killer to assassinate the president of the Soderbergh Chamber of Commerce. This costs at least thousands or even tens of thousands of gold coins. Can also invite powerful mercenaries to risk their lives to intercept the transport team. And the price here is bound to be no less than a few thousand gold. According to you, it should be the nobles, and only they have this strength. Andre said, these nobles want to kill their competitors because of the higher tax rate to maintain their own profits. Why didn't they do it earlier? Wouldn't the profits be higher? Shillong couldn't understand. Quit early in the morning, quit late, but at this time, there must be something strange about this. And Shillong was not an expert in conspiracy, especially when he did not pay attention to other forces. He really couldn't analyze the results. After all, after he came to Shillong Kingdom, he has always belonged to the peace sect, making movies and learning swords. But since the enemy is targeting him, he naturally can't wait to die. He suspended his work and returned to the servants' temporary enemy. The arrival of the three-headed dragon naturally caught the attention of the servants from far away and quickly put down their work and waited for Shillong's meeting. Waiting for the arrival of the three dragons, Kusk hurriedly saluted Shillong. Armin also stopped fighting with a level 10 orc. He has been beaten in the past few days. Shillong asked Kusk to call all the leaders of the foreign races, then explain the matter. Finally, he said, now, the time has come to do my best for me. It is up to you to protect my property. Of course, I will not let go of those ignorant people who are against me. I will use transfiguration to transform you into human appearances. This helps to seduce them to the bait, and then you do what you can. It is best to catch them alive. If you can't catch them alive, just kill them. Of course, if you capture those humans alive, I will reward you, just like the one who reported and escaped. Of course, your will is our mission. Kusk said, you need to arrange the elites of various races. A total of 200 people are needed, and every 20 people are in a group. But you must pay attention to the arrangement of these people. There must be close people to stay in the clan land, understand? Shillong reminded. He worried that these guys would run away again. These chaotic and evil teasers must be properly disciplined. It was about an hour before Kusk found qualified candidates. More than 60 orcs, more than 20 demons, more than 10 ogres, more than 40 lizardmen, more than 30 harpies, and the rest are composed of gray dwarves, jackals, and several cyclops. Does not contain goblins and puppies. Shillong has cast a transformation technique for them one by one that can last 2 weeks. More than 200 people. All of them use this frequent transformation technique, enough to drain the magic power of several legendary wizards. These chaotic teases have never experienced transfiguration, and they feel uncomfortable all over, like wearing a few layers of thick padded jackets on their bodies, and some of them even broke the transformation directly. Zero, for this reason, directly put gravity on the broken ones, crushed them to death, then healed them, and continued to let them adapt. After 3 or 4 hours have passed, these guys have passed the test. After that, Zero chose some more clever ones from them as the captain. Basically takes the shaman among the orcs, the demons, the jackals, etc. as the captain, and there are some problems with other sensory intelligence. For this reason, Shillong also gave them a spirit dialogue spell for a certain period of time. Otherwise, they can't even communicate. This has to make Shillong sigh. It's really convenient to learn arcane, otherwise you can't do many things. Arcane is assistive technology. Assistive technology is developed to do more. Then let these guys leave with Andre. After, Shillong continued to build houses. Andre returned to Shillong City, arranged a transport team to transport the latest batch of audiovisual stones out of the city. There are 10 teams of carriages. Each team has 20 guards. These guards are all transformed from Shillong servants. All wore plate armor and looked ordinary, a little thin, and even a little ugly, looking dull-headed. At first glance, it was a force that crooked melons and cracked dates. Every unit was a little silent and seldom spoke along the way. After walking for more than 2 days, a troop passed by the mountain road. At this time, in the mountains 100 meters above this section of road, Surrounded by large tracts of trees, there are ambushing 40 or 50 soldiers wearing Kingdom Standard Armor's Wuxia World. Online. He opened his armor and lay some board in the shade of the mountains. There are only a few soldiers holding binoculars and watching the road below. When seeing such a group of people, a soldier whispered, "Come, here, a team is coming. I don't know if it's Sodberg's." Huh. Hearing the words, a leader who closed his eyes to enjoy the shade under the shade of the tree quickly got up, came to the soldier, grabbed the binoculars, and looked down. There are no banners of the Chamber of Commerce. There are 20 people in total. It looks like a group of crooked melons. The newly hired mercenaries of the Soderbergh Chamber of Commerce mentioned in the intelligence should be this group of guys. Is really ridiculous. In the transport death incident that happened just a few days ago, some people dared to take the order. Where is this third-rate mercenary? The ridiculous Soderbergh Chamber of Commerce removed the flag of the Chamber of Commerce as much as possible, and then invited these garbage mercenaries. Do you want to get through? The captain said to himself, with a sneer at the corner of his mouth. Hey, head, there are actually female mercenaries in this team. Give us a good time. A somewhat wretched soldier stared at the female mercenaries below, looking left and right. Although these women look more average, they are not women after all. Squatted guarding the mountains, he had been hungry for a long time. Of course. When did I treat you badly? The leader smiled. Brothers, copy guys to me. Work, brothers, give it to me. Defeat them. The leader yelled and took the lead in the charge. He started to slide straight down the mountain. The soldiers behind also slid down with a weird smile. Lifted up a cloud of dust. Part 1, Chapter 127. When it was tens of meters away from this transport unit, the people on both sides met. The leader only felt that the eyes on the opposite side were a little strange, happy, and relieved. Very complicated. What does it mean? Are these not mercenaries at all, but a group of pretending slaves? Was sent to die? But it doesn't matter. There is no one near. Regardless of any conspiracy, they have the power to eat each other instantly. The distance between the two sides is getting closer, and a dozen archers among the soldiers have been preparing for a long time. Swish, swish. A rain of arrows struck the transport unit. But somewhat unexpectedly, these guys are surprisingly quick to hide, and after a slight backstep, they hide. All the arrows hit the ground. There are also a few iron rods in their hands, and they shoot down the arrows. Seems to underestimate each other, the leader's heart said. But the next wave of attacks was launched again. The distance between the two sides is only the last 30 or 40 meters, and they have entered the casting distance of our magicians. In other words, they are over. Zio behind the team, several guys who also wear soldier uniforms flashed with thunder in their hands. Lightning beam! The dazzling thunder light turned into a thunder spear, and the speed was so fast that the mercenaries of the transport troops couldn't avoid it, and they hit 4 people in an instant. After the 4 transport troops were hit, they trembled and fell stiffly. Killed 4 is just a blow. This is magic. The warrior charged forward, and when they were about to touch the enemy, the brilliance of layer upon layer of gaining spells enveloped them, makes them stronger and faster. The priest Sagittarius is behind, perfect cooperation. This is the strength of our Crazy Wolf mercenary group. Although none of a group of people are more than 10th level, and there are few more than 7th level, they cooperate very well. Even if it is facing a 5-man 10-level professional army, there is a fighting force. Is near, getting closer. The distance between the two sides. At only 5 or 6 meters, the charging warrior has already touched the opponent, holding the big sword violently and slashing towards the enemy. Oh, 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 oh. The sluggish mercenaries of the transport troops in front of them suddenly roared. The voice is full of excitement. Is like a beast imprisoned, suddenly returning to the jungle. This is a wild roar. The leather armor that seemed to be of poor quality was instantly burst. The guys who fell on the ground burst their leather armor one by one and stood up. It turned out that the spell, just made their bodies numb and fell down. Is not the death that the attacker imagined. 7 or 8 people who were originally about 1.6 meters tall and looked like malnourished shorts suddenly became a group of green-skinned orcs with a height of more than 1.9 meters, full of green and fangs. The exaggerated muscles are surging. Picked up the mace that looked extremely unfit and slammed them at them. Pong! The soldiers who rushed ahead couldn't bear this power at all. Although they had priests blessed the power augmentation spell, they were still a lot worse than these elite orcs. Under the pain of the tiger's mouth, I almost couldn't hold the sword. But before they slow down, what greets them is a storm-like attack. Pong! 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 The mace kept smashing, and several soldiers resisted and endured the pain and were forced to retreat. The strength of the leader is much stronger than that of other fighters. With the blessing of spells, he is actually on par with an elite orc. While resisting the attack, he shouted wildly, "Mage! Mage! Hurry up and prepare for the next spell." The mage behind him continued to brew thunder. Gah! There was a piercing whir. The original women suddenly became monsters. His face, which was not so pretty, became as old as a bark, full of wrinkles, and his arms became wings. The feet became claws like eagle claws. 3 or 4 harpies are suddenly active. Gah! They cried out strangely, flapped their wings, and rose into the air, flew to the sky, and rushed towards the mage. The archer who attacked the army immediately bent his bow and set up arrows, ready to shoot. Shining Thunderman's blinking jump, chain lightning. With a cruel smile on the corner of his mouth, he watched Lei Meng scrambling among the archers. Twitched dozens of Sagittarius all over, and several of them were weak, foaming at their mouths, and fell to the ground. Gah! The harpy was no longer threatened by the archer, and instantly entered the group of wizards. 2 huge eagle claws grabbed the shoulders of the wizards. With a scream, the sharp claws pierced into the flesh, and blood gushed out with the mage's screams. Gah! They tweeted and led the wizard into the air. The attacking troops were instantly defeated. Seeing that the situation was wrong, the leader forced the orcs away and ran away. Roar! Where can the orcs allow their prey to escape? He roared, and with a violent charge, he lifted up a large amount of dust and ran towards the prey. It's like a rhino running wild. Within a few seconds, he caught up with the fleeing leader, and the mace hit the opponent. The leader hurriedly used his big sword to return to the defense, but the power of the orc elite's attack was too heavy, and it knocked him to the ground. Wuxia whirled, that online then. Before he could react, he felt a sharp pain in his arm. 2 arms were broken. The whole army collapsed instantly, with deadly deaths and wounds. The 50-man troop, in the end there were only more than 20 people left. The arms of these guys were all broken. A piece of coat, looks really miserable, was pressed by the servants at this time, and he wanted to return to Shillong. Just when they were about to return, suddenly a banshee quacked at the orc and the harpy. Yeah, this orc is the captain of this unit, and he was given the ability to understand the words of the wise race by Shillong. You said, you want these people? This is impossible. These are the people that the dragon wants. The orc frowned. Quack, quack, quack. Are you just borrowing it temporarily? The orc frowned, unconsciously puffed his mouth, and touched his fangs with his right hand. What do you borrow them for? These guys have lost half their lives. Quack. What? The orc captain was surprised, and then a little annoyed. You actually want to breed offspring here? Damn shit, so many things. Quack, quack. As if understanding the other party's insult, the harpy's cry became high-pitched. Shut up. I know. Don't kill people. These are the capital of our lives under the evil dragon, the orc cursed. He really wants to kill these disgusting bastards. If he hadn't known Shillong's magical ability, he would definitely detect lies and treat them as private property. If there is any change in the property, he will definitely intervene. He hacked these harpies to death long ago. Is that enough for them to shout? Part 1. Chapter 128. These miscellaneous beasts like to live near the dunghill. The smell on their bodies is really not something ordinary people can bear. Even if their orcs don't like to take a bath, they smell bad. But it can't be compared with the harpy. The stench on the female demons is just like the poop-head feces in the hot sun. Is enough to kill a jackal. On the way, the orcs have had enough of this smell. Transfiguration cannot change the other person's body odor. The orc looked at the few humans who were still sober with some sympathy. The harpies looked at them with beaming eyes. This makes their hearts feel cold. An assailant endured the pain in his arms and asked, "What do you guys want to do to us? If there is any requirement, as long as we do it, we must do it. The attack just now made us blind." As a captive, he didn't dare to ask about the other party's information. Often walks by the river. Today something happened finally. You don't need to know this. Humans, we have nothing to say with you. Just leave you to my lord. The orc replied the conversation between the orc and the harpy just now. The other party could not understand. If we are still useful to you, I would like to ask you to relieve the pain a little bit. You don't want us to die halfway, right? The captive said. Through the conversation just now, he got some information. These guys have masters and don't want to kill them. So maybe they want to subdue them, or what information do they want in their mouths? Stop the pain? We don't have a priest here. The orc replied and ignored him. A few harpies screamed and approached them. A strong dung smell pierced their noses. Hum hum vomit dash. Several men also clear the number of retching sound. Closer look at harpies. Goes ugly face. The hearts of the attackers increasingly feel bad. As mercenaries, they are well-informed and naturally understand the harpy style. Is also afraid because of knowing. One of them ran back after pulling their legs, but they are seriously injured now, and their body without arms has problems with their sense of balance. Where can they go? Gah! Seeing the prey run away, a harpy neighed excitedly and rushed into the sky. When flew over the top of the target's head and landed in front of the opponent, the broad wings swept the opponent directly to the ground. Gah! The banshee screamed excitedly and leaned over. No! Don't come close to me! The human was lying on the ground, kicking on two legs, and desperately backing away. Seeing that the banshee gets closer, the smell gets worse. The man suddenly turned his head to look at the other man behind him and said, "Poker, didn't you say that you wanted to a woman? Now go and do it. I'll give you the opportunity." He was terrified to the extreme. Poker is the former soldier who looked a little wretched, who once said he wanted to fight in the field. "I don't want it. I don't want it. I don't want a woman anymore. Help! Help!" Poke also yelled in fear, and a harpy approached him. Gah! Several female demons threw down their targets in excitement, and then used their claws attached to their wings to take out some powder from the thin, smelly clothes like twine, and sprinkle them on the face of the man under them. "No! Don't!" The man screamed, accidentally inhaling gas. Instantly let out a desperate roar. His little brother salutes. This is the aphrodisiac of the harpy, which has the effect of forcing estrus. Otherwise, with their dignity, where are the different heroes? I'm afraid that they are in heat, and the 5-color dragons that can go every day will not touch them. Gah! Seeing this scene, the banshee rushed forward immediately. Then, we showed the camera to the man's face. His expression changed from horror to grievance, then to dying, and finally to empty despair. 30 or 40 minutes later, the expressions of the men weakened a lot, as if they were a teenager. "Hurry up, stop it, I don't know. Nothing. Help." He whispered for help, pleadingly looking at the orcs watching the play. The orc captain also saw the problem. These men consume too much energy, and if they continue, they may really die. "Okay, stop it. If this goes on, they will die," the orc shouted. Quack! A group of harpies reluctantly left the man, and they looked at the men on the ground with some meaning. "I got saved." The man Pock burst into tears. If he can survive, he will cut off the thing from his lower body. He never thought that what he usually prides himself in would one day cause him to suffer such a serious crime. Time to cut. Only when he is cut, he is not afraid of being captured by the harpy again. The group is ready to return. They woke up the previously unconscious human being. When these humans woke up, their faces looked desperate. Then, they saw the guys who were awake before, one by one. As if they hadn't slept for 3 days and 3 nights, they were shocked. "What's happening here? I broke my hands and didn't let us go? Do you want to continue to abuse?" But something seems to be wrong, Wuxia World. Online, these guys look at them with grief and envy. That look is too complicated. The group finally left and returned. After 2 days of driving, the servants who returned to the Shillong territory were the first to return. Directly brought these prisoners to Shillong. At this time, Asylum also stopped building a house with his hands, and a pair of huge eyes looked at a human being the size of a pet cat. These humans are in a very bad state at this time. 2 consecutive days of driving has left them on the verge of collapse. 2 people have died on the way. Both of them were unlucky people who had been dealt with by the harpy. These guys at this time had no strength to be afraid. After they came to Shillong one by one, they lay on the ground, waiting to die. This is not what a distinguished guest should look like. "You guys, it took me a lot of effort to invite you." Asylum grinned. It took half a day to use the transfiguration technique and teach the idiot servants to maintain their form. This was the price of asking people, but Zero remembers deeply. The magic surging on his body, Zero did not kill these people, but instead treated them. The group therapy lasted about half an hour, and a group of people finally recovered some anger. The leader who was raped by the harpy braced himself and stood in front of Shillong. Although it was the first time facing a monster of Shillong's level, his legs were constantly swinging, but he did not flinch. "I've already died once, no. It should be someone who has experienced that life is worse than death. The experience after is difficult. He will not be afraid." Part 1. Chapter 129. You. As soon as the leader spoke, his voice was still slightly weak. "Are you their leader?" "That's right," Asylum said. "Are you guys? Dare to stop the transport troops of the Soderberg Chamber of Commerce." "So you are from Soderberg?" The leader laughed self-deprecatingly. "You want to ask me? Who wanted us to attack you? Stop dreaming. Let us experience that life-inferior nightmare of death. How could I tell you?" At the end, he gritted his teeth and showed his hatred for Shillong. Huh. Zero looked at this guy in surprise, and the hatred made him ignore the fear of death. Is so stiff in front of him. You need to know that even if Zero did not deliberately release the pressure, the first time he faced his weak individual, he would fall into fear. What did this human experience go through? "Are you so brave?" Out of curiosity, he directly asked the orc leader. "What have they experienced?" "Back to my lord, they—" "Wait! I say! The leader, who was still speaking harshly before, suddenly changed his attitude. He looked nervously at his side, the brother who was born and died together. He didn't want these brothers to know that he was tainted by the harpy. Can't afford to lose this person. If this is known, death will not be at ease. "First of all, we are not soldiers of the Xinglan kingdom," the leader said, looking down at his now ragged Shillong Kingdom standard armor, and shook his head. I can see it, Zero said. To be honest, we don't know who hired us. They're very generous. We are mercenaries, and we won't ask who the employer is. Just give us money. But they seem to have hired a lot of more famous mercenaries in the mainland to deal specifically with Usodaburg Chamber of Commerce. Finally, they are responsible for communication, a magic crow. That's all I know. The leader said seriously, is telling the truth. Shillong has been driving to detect lies. The opponent is blue in his eyes. Finally, I beg you, if you want to kill us, do it early, don't torture us. Let us die plainly. The leader's expression was indifferent, and there was no fear of facing death. No, I don't want to die. I have to live. My daughter-in-law is still there. My son is only a few months old. I can't just die like this. One of the mercenaries immediately cried. He looked at the leader bitterly. It was all this guy. Must take this order of business. Look, now something happened. The entire mercenary group is half dead, and half of them don't know if they can survive. Now this guy actually wants to die. Is really hateful. You don't understand. You don't understand anything. Keep on living, and you will definitely experience it, that terrifying nightmare. The leader said here. A few harpies swept away from the corner of his eye. It just shuddered, and his complexion turned pale. Is really interesting. What is it that makes the guy who doesn't fear death so terrified? Shillong cast his eyes at the green-skinned orcs, but he didn't expect these guys to be quite capable. One by one looks like a fake, but in fact they're all old and young. He didn't use any means, and the leader did everything. Be sure to ask after a while. Any disobedient human being encountered in the future, use this trick to deal with them. Don't worry. I won't kill you. After all, you are so obedient. Zero said. As soon as he said this, the expressions of the few who were defiled by the harpy did not change at all, and did not feel the slightest excitement for their escape. The others who survived the disaster were crying with joy. Keep babbling in place. I'm going to build a city here soon, just short of people. You stay and be my first batch of human subjects. Shillong said. What? Are we staying here? A group of people was shocked and looked around the green-skinned orcs, demons, wolves, and other foreign races around them. How is this possible? How can we live with these guys? I just inform you of this fact, not ask for your opinion. As prisoners of war, you have no right to choose here. Shillong sneered. With me, you are just the most inferior slaves and want to get rid of slaves. Identity, become ordinary citizens. Go and call all your relatives and friends. Whoever asks 50 people to join my city, he can get citizenship, and any alien who dares to insult you without justification will be punished. Of course, this is not for you to cheat your relatives and friends. As long as your relatives and friends are not wrong, you will directly have the status of ordinary citizens with me. I promise that they will live better than before. A group of mercenaries hesitated. If you have been slaves, you may not be able to live here for long. I will not protect the lives of slaves. Shillong continued. Came to him and became a slave directly, it must have made a big mistake, such as robbers, bandits, and murderers. There are those guys who are enemies with him. The life of such a person Wuxia World .online is not worthy of respect. Okay, we must find you more people. They gritted their teeth one by one. Very good enlightenment. Go back and cultivate for a few days, and then I will arrange for the servants who have been deformed by me to follow you. Once there is a change, they will instantly kill you. Shillong said. Then he asked his servants to arrange for these guys to go to rest, and told them not to move them. After all, the number of human inhabitants must be driven by them. A group of people came to the place where the servants lived and looked at the foreign races on the ground, especially the harpy group. They looked at them. Several people who had enjoyed the banshee, all trembled and shook all over, like a swing. There are also those ogres who like human flesh looking at them, causing their hairs to stand up. This is hell. Boss, Leader Wit, and two other people who were defiled by the harpy, they chose to live in the same room. At this time, the four people were sitting on wooden stools lifelessly. The atmosphere was extremely depressing. There were only 4 people inhaling in the room, and no one spoke. After a long time, someone said faintly, "Why? Isn't it okay for everyone to die? That way, I can stop recalling that nightmare. Death doesn't solve everything." Someone said, "Those greenskins will tell everyone this, and then they will laugh at us crazy. What about ridicule? We are all dead. Are you afraid of this?" The person asked before. "How can you not be afraid?" The last retort, "Think about it for yourself. If we die, someone buried us." Bury? Just like us. If someone wants to bury us, then I'm so happy. Part 1. Chapter 130. Don't interrupt me. It's really horrible. Just start now. Bury you on the land of your hometown, and then engrave your defilement by the harpy on the tombstone. Are you still happy? When the time comes, the whole village will know your scandal. Do you still have parents? Do you have a wife or daughter? If not, Do you have relatives or friends? Even acquaintances? As long as they know. What a terrible thing that would be. Think about it. In the future, if there are young people who want to join the adventure group, then their elders will tell them the story of us being defiled by the harpy, and then use the image of the harpy to scare them. I'm afraid no one wants to be an adventurer by then, and we will also become the protagonist of the story, the laughingstock of everyone. What a terrible thing this is. This person looked terrified. Why does he think so much? Because this guy did it. After killing a previous mortal enemy, he pretended to be an old friend of the other party and returned to the hometown. Then he twisted a story and made the other party's reputation so bad. When this person said, all the other 3 people's complexion changed. They don't want to be stinking for thousands of years. There was silence again. For a long time, the one who said he was going to die before said again, what do you do? Have you seen it before? The eyes of those harpies looking at us, it's terrifying. I never want to experience it again. At the end, the big man couldn't help crying. That nightmare-like memory will never fade. There is only that. Only that. We can forget the past. No longer need to be afraid of the harpy. Boss muttered to himself, as if he had been wicked, standing up and staying in the room. Glanced around. Found it, he said again. Went straight to the corner behind him. There's a hatchet there. For chopping wood. Came to the axe. He lightly picked up the axe, showing a sick smile. You, what do you want to do? The leader wit, who had not spoken, finally spoke, and his bad premonition grew stronger. In order to get rid of the nightmare. Boss smiled and said, pulling down his pants lightly with his left hand and sitting down again. He glanced at his brother and showed a relief smile. I want this iron bar. Has what's the use? The right hand, holding the hatchet, swung down suddenly. Click. The hatchet's blade brought up a flower. Boss couldn't help but screamed. His body fell, his hands tightly covering his lower body. Blood kept flowing from the gap between his hands. A small radish with a rhizome fell to the ground on one side. With an axe, take the leaves to the root. Boss roared in a low voice. Blue veins on his forehead jumped wildly. The pain is extreme. The blood keeps flowing out. No way. You will die if this goes on. Go and call the orc shaman to come for treatment. Chief Vit was anxious and hurried out to find an orc shaman. This shaman walked into the room and took a look. Good fellow. Are all human beings such cruel creatures? Didn't they all say that they were timid? Look at this. You are so cruel to yourself. Don't you want to go to heaven to the enemy? The orc shaman took a breath and quickly took out the herbs, matched his spells, and started healing. Half an hour later, Boss was already awake. Although his lower body was still in pain, he put on a smile on his face, as if waking up from a nightmare. He looked at the orc shaman next to him, and he understood the cause and effect in his heart, and with a smile on his face, he thanked the shaman. Then he said to the other 3 brothers, riding the shaman here, it's better to cut it with the 3 of you, as long as this is the way to say goodbye to the past. Really, after that, I feel better. When I was a teenager, all troubles are gone. While speaking, there was a sense of holiness. The other 3 people looked at each other, and they didn't know how to reply. What? Are you not willing? Think about what is flying in the sky outside. As long as that thing is still there, we will experience it sooner or later. Bostau. The other 3 trembled, and fear came to their hearts again. One of them couldn't help but wow and retched. Tears flowed down. You said yes. Only in this way, we can get free. The man said, picking up the hatchet before and looking at the orc shaman. I beg you for the rest. Up. 1. The orc shaman is very shocked now. His eyes are wide open, and he listens to the conversations of several humans with amazement, although some places do not understand. For example, what makes them so crazy? But I probably understand what these people are going to do next. As soon as he saw this man take off his pants, he wanted to cut. He quickly stopped and said, wait, shaman, you don't have to stop us. This is the path of our own choice. But I beg you, don't tell others, the man pleaded. I am not interested in your human affairs, but if you chop yourself, you must at least wash off the axe. Otherwise, it will be very troublesome to treat the wound. This short axe still has blood stains on the person before. The shaman looked at a few people Wuxia World, got online. He didn't want to stop them, but wanted to tell them that if you want to cut, at least you have to wash the axe. Do you guys chop? Care about me? I was told to take care of you, not to die. When did you humans and our orcs get so familiar? Oh, this person was taken aback, and then he cleaned a bit, and then followed Boss's footsteps. The orc shaman was on the side, and his scalp was a little numb. This is what I have witnessed. He couldn't help but caress his brother gently. Fortunately, he was still there. Although a bit old, it is still very useful. When he looked at the other person enduring the pain, and he felt a vague admiration for several human beings. Is so cruel to myself. It's a big deal. Treat this person again. There was also a smile on the man's face. Okay, really good. I no longer fear. Feeling out of the dark mist. I have found my true self. Boss, you're right. He was very happy. Congratulations. We are out of hell. Boss was very happy, and the two gave a hug. Two ruthless people. The orc shaman commented in his heart, then looked at the other two and said, "You two, cut it?" The other two were caught in a difficult decision. The two looked at each other, and finally one of them said, "I cut." Then I washed the hatchet, and with a click, the ground turned into 3 radishes. The shaman treated again and looked at the last person. Now only the leader, Wit, is left. His will has always been the highest among the 4, and he is now caught in a difficult decision. Is it cut or not? Part 1. Chapter 131. After a long silence, he smiled ugly and replied, "Let me think about it." "All right, but you'd better hurry up. In a few days, you have to go back and recruit people. Don't make any accidents, otherwise you will definitely die." The orc shaman reminded him and left. There are only 4 people left in the room. In the time after, Werther felt very clearly that he was squeezed out, and the other 3 were reluctant to talk to him. The look in his eyes is strange. At night, the other 3 slept very sweetly. They are really not afraid of anything. But Werther couldn't fall asleep. The harpy screams from time to time outside, which always reminds him of the nightmare of the previous 2 days. Fear, like a tide, wave after wave. I was afraid that when he fell asleep, a harpy suddenly broke in, captured him, and relived his old dream. He just waited until dawn and the sun rose. The other 3, with weird smiles, raised their backs, greeted each other, and turned their eyes to Werther. The dark circles under the eyes are extremely different. But they didn't say much. Why is this? They understand. After, they did their own things. Until the evening, when eating dinner, all the humans gathered together, telling the fear of last night and all the things they experienced in the morning. Suddenly, someone said, "Do you know? Case, who was in the same room with us last night, died. He went out to the bathroom last night and never came back. I suddenly heard those green-skinned orcs talk about it today. Is said to have been abducted by the harpy and raped. At last. Is terrible. That's a harpy, a disgusting creature that can scare my brother directly back into his stomach. But fortunately, the harpy who kidnapped people was severely punished. I heard that she could not move for the fewest months and was not allowed to treat her. Otherwise, I'm really afraid that it will be our turn next night. But we can't be careless. Don't go out at night. Lock the door." A group of people listen with fear in their hearts. Miserable. If I can do this with beautiful women, I am willing. But with the harpy? It's better to let me die directly. Only the 3 castrated men of Boss with weird smiles, quietly listening to them, telling everything. As if everything has nothing to do with oneself. In Wit, his complexion has become more ugly. Really, those monsters will not let us go. As long as you keep that stuff. Sooner or later I will still be. Werther's body trembled wildly. Until dinner is over, they go back to their rooms. He invited the previous shaman over. Then, under the eyes of the other 3 people, he drew out the previous hatchet. Clicked. Shaman finished his treatment. After exited, Wood also smiled. Really, the world is really quiet. I have nothing to fear. He looked at the other 3 with a smile. The 4 of them hugged each other, as if returning to the old days of daring. From now on, we will not fear death. We will not fear pain. Help all those who are confused. We are purification angels. 2. According to legend, angels living in heaven are all genderless. Are we now considered angels? A great organization was born at this moment. After a few days of rest, the 4B-Day angels saw several groups of humans being captured and returned. These guys are also unlucky mercenaries attacking the Soderbergh Chamber of Commerce. However, these guys are a little better than them. At least they haven't met the harpy. After, the first group of people were sent out, ready to bring people back, increasing the number of humans in the city of tomorrow, and 5 servants followed each. After they went out, it took 3 days before anyone returned. Is Wit. His family lives in a remote town more than 100 kilometers away. This small town is the domain of a baron, with heavy taxes all the year round. Ordinary people can only eat black bread every day and only eat a piece of white bread every few days. There is no savings and life is very difficult. And Werther actually left the town 10 years ago to mix with mercenaries. These villagers didn't know. But after all, Wit's ancestors lived there for a long time, and these people recognized Wit after seeing him. Afterwards, I saw that Wit was wearing extraordinary clothes. But they didn't know. This clothing was loaned to them by Shillong, and it cost 2 silver coins. Is to make these guys look human. It is worth mentioning that all the previous assets of these guys have been confiscated. After all, as a slave now, how can you save money for them? However, Shillong is still very enlightened. As long as they can draw 50 people, they will still be citizens, and the confiscated ones will be returned. This naturally motivates these guys. Of course, Wit doesn't value gold coins so much anymore. He wants to improve his status. Only in this way can they realize their wish of Buddhist angel. Well, That is a very great wish. For this, he deceived the village. Wood told them that the city he is now in is a very big city. He met people inside, and he knew a big businessman. The merchant's chamber of commerce lacked people, so he could take the villagers to make money together. 1 gold coin per month. These people Wuxia world that online naturally didn't believe it at first, but Wood's tongue blossomed, and with the luxurious clothes, they were generous. Also the gold coins lent to them by Shillong. These people finally gave it a try. Attitude came with items, but as soon as they got here, they realized that it was different from what they thought. Where's this big city? Is there a shortage of rich businessmen in the chamber? Pull them to make money together? Clearly sold them. These people are passionate, but they dare not do it. Just kidding. Here are the green-skinned orcs and the evil races, a pair of green eyes glaring at them. What can they do? Although angry, he can only stare at Wood at best. Then they were sent to Shillong. Looking at Ciro's super huge body, these guys were almost scared to death one by one. Several were scared and fainted. A few were really scared to death. My heart stopped beating. Shillong used healing spells to rescue them. When they were in a stable state, Shillong told them his own rules here, and said that he would let those servants get along with them. If anyone dared to bully them, they could go directly to the orc leader Kusk. He gives those who dare to insult them the punishment they deserve, and let the servants provide them with food for a period of time. We'll also give them the land, let them grow their own. After planting, it will be their own. And the tax is only 10%, which is much easier than 50% in their previous towns. No matter where it is, the smaller the place, the poorer it is. Part 1, Chapter 132. The baronial territory has the highest taxes, because the taxes they receive must be handed over to their superiors, layer upon layer, and finally handed over to the kingdom. As soon as these words were spoken, few actually heard them. After all, they were still in a state of fright. But they soon felt the change in their lives in the following days. Is indeed better than before. First, Shillong let them live in the newly constructed house. These houses are all built by Shillong using earth-based shaping magic. Although it is a one-story bungalow, there is no furniture in it, which is relatively primitive in his eyes, but for the people in these small towns, it is much better than before. The daily food has also improved. Those green-skinned beasts actually provide them with a small amount of meat every day. This is meat, high-quality delicacy that you will never eat twice a year. Almost made them swallow their tongues. There are also some good-tasting fungus plants which taste great too. Life here, how many times stronger than they didn't know before. Also, on the open space outside the fence where signs are inserted, it really divides an open space for every family. Specially distributed seeds for this purpose. These seeds are potatoes, tomatoes, and wheat, all of which were purchased by the Soderbergh Chamber of Commerce in Shillong a few days ago. Then let these civilians plant them. Of course, these seeds are not sent, but borrowed. After the civilians plant them, they can sell them to him to pay off their debts when they grow fruits. Generally speaking, Shillong was broken to take care of these civilians. But this is necessary to build the city. The money spent is not too much, although it is still very distressing. But Shillong is also looking to the future. For Shillong, it is fine to spend money, but it is worth considering whether it is worth it. Just like the dragon is willing to spend a lot of money to watch movies, they think that movies that can improve their mental cognition are worth watching. Shillong believes that it is worthwhile to build a city of its own and develop an ideal country based on it. One after another, all the servants who had protected the transport team returned. Brought back dozens of people again. Without exception, they don't know who actually posted the task to them and hired them. These people were demoted to slaves and then sent to their hometowns. Since he didn't know who did it, Shillong couldn't help it. It's not the time to go deeper anyway. With his current strength, confidence can crush all conspiracies. At the moment, building a city is the most important thing, and the rest will be released first. But if those guys are against him, then they will definitely be sent to make trouble in the future, and they will naturally have a chance to catch them. A total of 1 month. Those who were sent out to pull people also returned one after another. Brought more than 1,200 humans to Shillong. The population of 2 or 3 baronies is already low. The humans before, in order to get rid of slavery, they also desperately put the folks to death. But after the pit came, they slowly felt that it didn't seem that bad. But there were still a few unlucky ones, and they didn't return, and the perception magic Ciro had used on them also disappeared. This represents the disappearance of their lives. They were attacked and killed on the way. This is also normal. After all, relatively speaking, there are still some criminals and a small number of monsters in the wild. The city built by Shillong is also considered preliminary. The houses are all one-story bungalows, covering an area of about 50 or 60 square meters to hundreds of square meters. Has built thousands of them. Ordinary humans, if the whole family comes from young and old, it will naturally be given to the largest one, and the one who is the only one, or the husband and wife, is given the smaller one. These houses are relatively ordinary, in his opinion. If you want to build a gorgeous house, you still need to hire a professional. The newly built city, Shillong, was named City of Tomorrow, looking forward to the city of the future. The servants living in the forest, Shillong also let them move out. Although they disagree a lot, Shillong does not need their consent. Force them to move out. Each divided a section of life. All live together, and the total population has reached more than 7,500. The rules will naturally be more perfect. He divided the creatures he controlled into 4 levels. Slaves are generally people who have made serious mistakes. This kind of people will be paid attention to by the residents of the whole city. Once they violate the law, they will be punished severely and maybe put to death. In most cases, they stay here, in the prison, but there are prisoners in Shillong. Ordinary citizens living here, their lives are guaranteed. Others are not allowed to strip their lives wanton, and they can live comfortably in the newly built city of tomorrow. There are also urban law enforcement teams, which are actually similar to ordinary citizens, but they have certain law enforcement powers. Ordinary citizens have an obligation to cooperate with them. Of course, they cannot act recklessly. Otherwise, they will be investigated by their superiors. The most senior is naturally Shillong's relatives. Can also be regarded as a royal family at the level of the Earth Emperor. However, these people are basically metal dragons, Wuxia World. Online, they can't do anything bad if they want to. A group of different races live in the same city. Although they are separated, the problem is not small. For example, in the area near the Harpy, there are complaints about these disgusting guys defecating feces and making them smelly. For this reason, these female demons are naturally not convinced. This is the preference of their ethnic group. What's the problem? But Shillong finally forced them to make corrections. After going to the toilet, you must go to the public toilet and take a bath at least once a week, and arrange a supervision team for them. If a harpy who has a slave status dares not to do it and just kills half to death, who has already done meritorious service, becomes a citizen, or becomes a law enforcement team because of good strength, citizen points will also be deducted. If it is a negative number, it will become a slave. These citizen points are naturally only available for doing things for Shillong. Like the previous poll people, they are all recorded with points. It seems that these systems are not very fair, but they are necessary. These brutal, chaotic teases are too difficult to discipline. And when dealing with this kind of guy, Zero will not be merciful. It's like Blue Star. He always felt that Xiaogua's laws were too generous to certain beasts. Made a mistake, because it should be punished heavily. Shillong did the same, such as theft. As long as ordinary theft value is less than 1 silver coin, is an administrative case. 1 silver or more is a criminal case. Administrative cases start directly off you from 1 month to 1 year. The criminal starts 3 years to the death penalty. There will be no good days when they are locked up in it. Needless to say, the daily labor reform is nothing but rye bread every day. Person sentenced to death must hang them at the gate of the city to announce the sins committed in his life. Part 1, Chapter 133. Let him stinks for thousands of years. He wants to build an ideal, peaceful country. His system is considered a high-pressure system. At first, many foreign races couldn't stand it and wanted to resist, but it was useless. As the city lord, Silem's strength was overwhelming. As long as he wants, he can wipe out all life in the city in 1 minute. And there are many people who want to survive after all. Although these alien races are chaotic and amusing, but they are not afraid of death. After hundreds of aliens died, the city's security gradually stabilized. These alien races and humans have initially accepted the new order and rules. Then, Zero began to train the elite of the alien race every day. Want them to improve their combat power. After all, they are defenders of the city's public order. Also, Shillong still lets some people out every day, attracting humans everywhere to live, and promised that those who are already citizens will reward 50 copper coins for pulling 1 person. Although not many, but as long as enough people are pulled, it will definitely make them rich. The most important thing is that these guys have never seen the market. They are all from small places, and their annual income may only be 1 gold coin. This makes many people happily devote themselves to the career of pulling people. Of course, some of them are in groups. Some have to hire foreign bodyguards. In short, it is not easy. In the past month, the mercenaries who attacked the Soderbergh Chamber of Commerce were annihilated. The captured prisoners, and some of them estimated to have received news, and did not dare to show up. The transportation team of the entire Soderbergh Chamber of Commerce has once again restored peace. Another month has passed. Xinglan Wancheng, the palace hall. His Majesty the King was listening to the report of the officials, and bored his right hand on his face. An official was holding a booklet and talking. Your Majesty, according to intelligence, many filmmakers have given up on making films. Among them, the Soderbergh Chamber of Commerce is the most. Going on, by the end of the year, I am afraid that taxation will not be too ideal. After hearing the report, the king snorted coldly. These stupid businessmen. Are you protesting against me? In my country. Earning my money. Is it showing me a face now? Soderbergh. Really brave. My dear Majesty. If you are willing to return to the previous tax rate, I think the people in Soderbergh are still willing to continue shooting movies. The Marquis of Maclay said at this time. Huh. As the king of a country, how can I go back and forth? The king cast an uncomfortable look at the other side. At this time, a general-looking person and Omari looked at each other and stepped forward. Your Majesty, our air patrol team discovered that when patrolling the Silver Moon Forest on the border a few days ago, there had been great changes. An evil dragon is building a city there. What? Are there evil dragons who dare to build a city in my territory? The king stood up, his face full of anger. Holding the handle of the golden throne with his right hand, he unconsciously squeezed out a madra. This looks at him like nothing. No matter which country encounters this, it is all the shame of being a king. It's okay to have evil dragon forces in your own territory. It's just a local power after all. It's generally just a little trouble in the borders of the kingdom, forests, swamps, etc. Unless they don't want their servants anymore, they generally won't take the initiative to attack the big cities of the kingdom, and they will be punished by the kingdom. The evil dragon without servants, but the sweet potato in the eyes of the dragon slayer warrior. Don't look at the dragons being so powerful. But some dragon-slaying warriors are really not afraid, especially those from the noble family. They all regard slaying dragons as an honor. In order to deal with the dragon, they are willing to spend money, purchase a complete set of resistance equipment. These guys even have a complete strategy to deal with a certain dragon. This will allow them to deal with the dragon with extra effort. The average combat power of the team increased by 2 to 3 levels. Of course, there are very few such groups. In a kingdom of hundreds of millions of people, there may only be 1 or 2 such groups. Therefore, ordinary evil dragons, the king does not take it seriously. But building a city is different. This is naked on his king's head. No aspiring king can bear this kind of humiliation. The difference between the two is that a sniper is like a thief who steals some gadgets from the yard while the owner is away. When the owner comes, he runs away. And the one who built the city is like a thief who walks into your yard, points to this piece of land, and tells you that it will be his from now on. Who can stand this? After, the speaking general directly took out an audio-visual stone and played it in front of everyone. This video was shot from high altitude, in an area where only half of a wall is built. Dense bungalows are built inside. All above are aliens the size of ants. The most conspicuous thing is a weird black gold dragon. His body is very large, much larger than a bungalow. Even when looking down at a kilometer high, it is the size of a normal beast. This dragon. The king looked carefully at WuxiaWorld.online before continuing. Why is this dragon so like the one in Lucia's mouth? It's all black, but there is golden light in its scales. Circulation, looking at its size, it almost fits. The king didn't speak loudly, but it was very quiet now. Everyone heard it clearly, so they looked at each other with a little surprise. The Duke of Omari said at this time, Your Majesty, do you know this dragon? I heard it, the king replied, and then ordered the guard on one side. You go and call Lucia. I have something important to ask her. The guards glanced at each other and left quickly. About half an hour, Lucia only arrived. She looked at the people who were in the gloom with some surprise and saluted the king. Father, you call me? Not bad, the king said as he waved to Lucia. Come and see. Do you know the dragon on this audio-visual stone? Lucia was a little surprised, but she walked over and glanced at the dragon on the shadow stone. She was shocked and immediately recalled the other's power at the time. Father, this is the one I told you. Said nothing in the last words. She glanced at the others in the hall, but the meaning was already obvious. Hateful. This strange dragon mixed with the good metal dragon dared to humiliate me so much. I must make him pay. The king was furious, slapped his right hand, and directly slapped the golden throne under him. Smash! Father is calm. Where did he provoke you? Lucia asked directly, not understanding the situation. The king simply said the matter in irritation, and finally said, This is your friend? Seeing the kingdom so as nothing. Such a wolf, an ambitious man. I will kill him. Part 1, Chapter 134. The more the kingdom thought, the more angry, and directly roared. The herald. One person in the hall immediately stood up. Declare my will and order the kingdom juggernaut, Troy Farm, to serve as the Legion Marshal, and the kingdom sage, Robert Very, to serve as the supervising army. Order 20,000 elite. Prepare 5 dragon annihilators. Give me kill that dragon. Let them pull off the dragon skin, and every scale armor comes to see me. What? Father, please don't be so impulsive. Ciro may not mean it. Please let me communicate with him. Lucia was surprised. Shut up. Didn't he mean it? He did it deliberately. The dragon builds a city, and it has been a taboo since ancient times. He cares about the taboo in vain, and he can't blame me for dying for it. The metal dragons who have made friends with him will not blame me, the king roared. But Silanta, Lucia wanted to say something, but the king wouldn't let her go on, and roared. Come here. Shut Lucia back to the palace and take care of it. Don't leave half a step, lest you run out to give me a whistleblower. Yes, the guard on one side shouted, quickly came to the princess and said, offended, took the princess and left. Damn Shillong Soderbergh. Damn Soderbergh Chamber of Commerce. No wonder you don't continue making movies. So, I want in my turf. It's against me. I will definitely let you pay for your stupidity. The king roared angrily. Speaking of this, a lot of information has been exposed. A few smart people have already thought of a lot of things, and some who don't understand don't dare to ask the angry king at this time. The will to attack the dragon on the border quickly flowed out of the palace. General Swordsmanship Academy. Inside a large driving range, the sun shines in through the surrounding windows. Appeared very warm. In the middle of the practice field, two figures were in a fierce confrontation. No, that's not all right. Because of a figure holding a sword in his right hand, standing still waving the sword in an understatement. It completely blocked the attack of another figure like a storm. These two figures are one big and one small. They are the college's strongest genius, William Morris, and his teacher, legendary swordsman, Troy Farm. William stared at Troy stubbornly, turned into a ghost with one hand, and danced the sword in his hand at an astonishing speed of dozens of swords per second, attacking his teacher. The sweat on his forehead gradually slipped, but he didn't care at all. His eyes didn't blink, and he devoted himself to the attack. Both attacked and defended for 10 minutes. William was exhausted, stopped the attack, supported the sword with both hands. The tip of the sword landed on the ground, breathing heavily. He supported the body that seemed to fall down at any time, slowly recovering strength. Your attacks seem to have been particularly impatient these days. This is not like the previous you. Although the attack was equally quick, every attack will be just right. And now it's too messy. Troy's expression was plain. In this competition, it's better to point out, he didn't use much strength at all. The breath was very stable from beginning to end. Did not even move a step. The 14th level genius swordsman is far from the legendary. WHHHHHHHH. William continued to gasp for a while, and then said, Teacher, do you think I will surpass the dragonborn named Silom in the future? Yes. Troy smiled. Why? Do you care about that failure? How could you not care? William laughed self-deprecatingly. It's too ugly to lose. I am known as the strongest genius in the academy and possess legendary assets. The results of it not only lost the face of the teacher, but also lost the face of the college, lost his face. You think too much. Troy said, you are not ashamed of losing. The other party is a super genius among the Dragonborn. You must know that we humans can be said to be ordinary due to our natural blood talent. Can't be compared with Dragonborn at all. You have to know that a human being does nothing. By the time he reaches adulthood, his combat power may not even reach level 1. But where is the Dragonborn? Adults have almost human level 6 strength, not to mention those with outstanding talents. If the mother of the Dragonborn is a legendary dragon, then the talent of the Dragonborn will be very terrifying, and it will have the strength of a 9th level human warrior as an adult. And like Shillong, his mother must be the best in the legend. Under such conditions, the Dragonborn is naturally more powerful. But don't be discouraged. You need to know that a Dragonborn like Shillong, don't look at his tender face, but now he is 30 to 40 years old. At this age, he has not reached the legend. What is so depressed about you? Or, when you are in your 30s or 40s, you still don't have the confidence to advance to legend. After listening to Troy's words, William seemed to be in a better mood. He grinned slightly and said, Of course I have. Before I turn 30, I will advance to legend. Very ambitious. That's great. Keep this determination. Troy smiled and patted William on the shoulder, making the opponent almost fall. Continue to rest for 10 minutes, then continue training. Hasn't rested for 5 minutes. Wuxia World, that online the gate of the driving range was opened. 2 soldiers in silver chain mail rushed towards Troy, attracted the attention of the two. Troy glanced at the opponent's chain mail. There is a simple star carved in front of the armor, and underneath is a blooming flower. This is the national emblem of the Shillong Kingdom. Looking at the color injected in the carving, it is purple. Troy raised his eyebrows unconsciously. Are you palace guards? The purple national emblem. Only the kingdom guard can engrave it. Yes, Lord Troy. The 2 guards hurriedly put their right hands on their chests and saluted. Your Majesty the King has an urgent move. You and Robert Sage will lead an army of 20,005 dragon annihilators. Immediately go to the blue and white forest to fight against a legendary dragon. Huh. Troy and William's eyes widened slightly. What did you say? Fight against the dragon in the blue and white forest? I remember a legendary old green dragon and a legendary old black dragon. Does your majesty want two to fight together? Send out such a strong force? Troy was surprised. No, it's not these two. It's a black and gold dragon. This evil gentian is bold. It dares to build a city outside the blue and white forest. It arouses the anger of his majesty, the guard explained. There is such a courageous dragon. Troy was stunned. I know. You go back first, wait for me to change equipment, and set off immediately, sent two guards. William looked at Troy and said, Teacher, this crusade. I haven't finished speaking, but the meaning is clear. He was a little worried about Troy. After all, the opponent is a legendary dragon. Part 1. Chapter 135. Ha! Troy laughed. Don't worry, William. I can come back here and stand in front of you in less than 10 days. Legendary dragon only. His Majesty was really angry this time. He actually sent 2 legends, plus 20,000 troops, and 5 dragon annihilators. Even with 3 legendary dragons, I can defeat them. My child, there is Dragon Annihilator. You don't need to worry about this. The well-known classification of levels was proposed by the Adventurers Union. They used their excellent experience of adventurous all the year round to separate a hierarchy for monsters, humans, and elves. 1 is the level of the monster. Is called a challenge level by adventurers. Is the career level of the adventurer himself. The 2 are different concepts. The monster level is equivalent to the boss level in the game. Like a monster challenge level of 15th. For 5 adventurers of the same level are needed to fight against and defeat. This still requires a reasonable occupational distribution of adventurers. Therefore, below the legend, if the humans are at the same level, humans will be beaten by monsters. But after entering the legend, it is different. A strong human being will have a strength star. Is like the evolution of life levels. They have greatly increased their strength and have the possibility of singles out a certain legendary monster. This is why Troy is so confident. Not to mention the army and dragon-killing weapons. Smiling slightly, William said, Then I will wait for the teacher. I feel that I will be promoted to a level 15 swordsman soon. You still need a lot of practice from the teacher. The 2 said their final farewell, and Troy left. For most of the day, the 2 coaches and 20,000 soldiers were gathered, pushing 5 dragon annihilators and slowly leaving the barracks outside the kingdom, heading towards the blue and white forest. In the sky at the front of the entire team, there are 2 crowned griffins. The heads of these 2 griffins are half the size of ordinary griffins, and the length of them is close to 4 meters without the tail. 2 meters high. Wingspan is about 5 or 6 meters. Set the commander-in-chief of the army, the legendary sword Saint Troy Pham, and the legendary Saint Robert Valley. Troy is full of energy, wearing a light armor. The legendary Fazan is an old man about 60 years old. Has a beard. His beard and hair are slightly white. Different from warriors, the mage is a profession that is more powerful as it gets older, so the senior mage is basically not young. The 2 looked at the army behind them, and Troy sighed with emotion. It's been a long time since we launched such a big battle. 2 legends plus 20,000 troops, plus 5 dragon destroyer. I really feel sad for that dragon. I guess his brain was changed. It was a pig brain. In his opinion, this dragon is already a dead dragon. This time the 20,000 soldiers in the army are all elite, plus 5 dragon destroyer, specializing in restraining dragons. Even if you don't add them too, they are enough to deal with legendary dragons. Let alone add them too. Both of them have been in the legend for some years. One-on-one, it may be a bit difficult to play against the legendary dragon, but together, they already have the strength to kill the legendary dragon. When the troops with the power of slaying dragons and the individuals with the power of slaying dragons are combined together, they already have the possibility of killing each other. Is not defeated, but to kill. It's better to be careful. The dragon is so confident, it must have some strength, and strength is not just an ordinary legend. Robert was a little cautious. So what? The pig's brain is even Gulong. If you dare to fight hard, we can keep him. He would never dream of dreaming. His Majesty would be so angry, right? Please give us 2. Such a luxurious army was given back. Today I will be a dragon-slaying warrior again. Troy laughed boldly. Robert smiled and shook his head. In fact, he just reminded him instinctively just now. He didn't really think that the army could not deal with the dragon. A group of people walked for a long time before camping and resting. Until tomorrow morning, he set off again. It took 2 days to finally see the enemy camp. This enemy camp is ridiculous, completely exposing the residential houses, which are far away, about 3 or 4 kilometers. Robert, who had applied eagle-eye surgery and equipped with a telescope, Troy saw that the alien races inside were moving. They didn't even know that a force had already attacked them. There is not even a single exploratory force, and the information is so backward, so dare to build a city. It is ridiculous. With a sneer, Troy began to order. All magic forces prepare to release a bursting fireball toward the sky at 75 degrees. Rear, Dragon Annihilator, adjust the direction. Say hello to the evil dragon. After saying this, he said to Robert, "It's up to you next. The legendary mage of the Starland Kingdom." "Of course." Robert smiled and started chanting spells quickly. Soon, a dark portal appeared in the sky. This portal is about 3 meters in diameter. The mage of the army received the order and immediately launched the action. Among the 20,000 troops, there are 1,000 wizard troops Wuxia World that online these wizards are all elite wizards above level 5, proficient in 5 elemental spells. Under a command, one by one began to cast spells. The surrounding fire magic power began to rise sharply, and masses of scarlet flame spheres formed in the hands of the wizards. The fiery red light almost changed the color of the space within a kilometer. Inside the fiery red flame sphere, the fire element kept rolling around, looking extremely unstable. When these flames swelled to half a meter, the wizards pushed them with both hands and shot them into the sky at 75 degrees. Rush, rush! Thousands of bursting fireballs measuring half a meter in length. They look extraordinary. These fireballs flew into the sky one by one. The portals were surprisingly neat, and they lined up into the portals one by one, showing the amazing unity and execution power of the entire army. Is the huge Dragon Annihilator at the end of the troop. The muzzle was pressed down slightly, and the blue magic light gathered on the arrow of the muzzle, and the magic pattern engraved on the entire arrow was all activated. A series of electric lights strung up on the orbit of the ballista. The arrows trembled slightly. This seems to be accumulating until a few seconds later, accompanied by a roar. The blue electric light exploded in the muzzle. With a series of sonic booms, arrows over 10 meters in length flew out. The extreme speed, rubbing against the air, brought a series of sparks in the void. City of Tomorrow. The atmosphere is still relatively peaceful. People in various areas are either talking with each other or adding bricks and tiles to their own house, making the house more satisfying. Others compete in the open space. Part 1. Chapter 136. More are farming near the outer bungalows. The vast majority of these plowers are humans, and some of them are aliens. This is Shillong's death order. As the population increases in the future, the monsters in the forest will be eaten into rare animals sooner or later. Now we must make preparations to make crops a staple food. Just when all the aliens thought that today was as calm as yesterday, a portal suddenly appeared in the sky. It is like a mouth of darkness that swallows everything. These aliens looked at this strange portal with some doubts. The next moment, a ray of fire appeared from the dark portal. Immediately afterwards, the sky fire came. Fireballs with a diameter of half a meter appeared from the portal, pouring toward the crowd below. When the first fireball fell in the crowd, the fire element bound and the fireball broke free from the cage. They are scrambling to attack all around. Boom! They exploded. A strong fiery red light shines. The flame swallows everything within a few meters. What? A few hapless people who had not had time to escape were instantly swallowed by the flames. The fierce flame ignited their entire bodies. Animal skin jacket ignited a raging fire. The unlucky guy screamed and rushed out of the fire, but he couldn't stand the heat of the flame after a few steps and fell to the ground, trying to extinguish the flame with mud. But how easy are these flames to extinguish? They just rolled around in vain and finally were consumed by flames. Screamed and screamed, one after another. The portal in the sky was still moving, and fireballs bombarded everything on the ground like raindrops. He seems to be manipulated by humans, and he specifically moves to crowded places. Those with low strength can only wailing when hit by flames, waiting for rescue, or die directly. And some of those with high strength directly destroyed the flames in midair. But it's useless. These fireballs are bursting fireballs. When it is destroyed, it will turn into a rain of fire, falling in all directions. This is a premeditated attack. The entire radius of 1 kilometer has been turned into a flame hell. Just when everyone is exhausted, 5 azure blue lights followed, rumbling. They have a terrible sonic boom. It's like an unstoppable Thor spear. Easily smash the houses that dare to block them, and the earthy bungalows become mud and dust in the sky. Every blue light is the embodiment of death. Whenever a foreign race is touched, he will definitely die. Was crushed on the spot by a powerful impact. Became blood mist. In just an instant, every blue light killed dozens of alien races. In the end, it lost power due to too many impacts and landed on the ground hundreds of meters away, revealing its true face. A pointed iron pillar with a length of 10 meters and a diameter of more than 1 meter, engraved with magic patterns. Within 10 seconds, hundreds of aliens died tragically. Some powerful people screamed frantically on the ground. Among the dead groups, there are people of all races. But all to no avail. The portal is 600 to 700 meters from the ground. The Sky Troop tried to stop, but the portal that was controlled by this man was smashed to death by fireballs that kept falling down. Among magicians, there is no elite wizard who can target a portal hundreds of meters in the sky and make a precise hit. The bursting fireball is still falling. Seeing it last forever, it is impossible to say that the whole city will be turned into fly ash. Roar! A breathtaking dragon roar sounded. Like a thunderstorm, it seems full of anger. Rumbling with this explosion, a huge black, gold dragon soared into the sky. In the gap between the scales of the dragon, the golden streamer flickered crazily. The stream of golden particles in her eyes gathered and scattered, obviously full of anger in her heart. The flame of death gleams in the dark vertical eyes. He flapped his wings and quickly approached the still-moving portal. A red golden dragon breath spit down. 100 meters in front were shrouded in red-gold flames. The portal disappeared instantly. The surrounding magic nodes were burned by the extremely powerful fire element. The black gold dragon turned his head to look at the army several kilometers away and roared again. The tail wing flashed with red gold, has turned into a stream of red gold, and fell towards the troops several kilometers away with a roar. The long red gold tail wing is extremely beautiful, but in the eyes of people a few kilometers away, it is a terrifying death trail. Just 2 or 3 breaths, a group of people watched the meteor fall in their group, followed by a terrible popping sound. A kilometer in radius is like an earthquake of magnitude 10. The earth is shattered like a spider web. The ground vibrations wave after wave, spreading like a wave. The clods on the ground were shaken away, flying in the air. Within a few hundred meters of the falling of the meteor, all the soldiers were thrown out by a huge air wave. Large chunks of rock and soil splashed out in all directions. They looked like shells. Brought a lot of blood, and a large group of people were killed, smashed, buried in the dust. Roar! Thunder roar sounded from the dust. The dust in the sky was blown away by a huge roar instantly. You reading www.u.com, let everyone see the true face of the meteor. A black gold dragon with a height of at least 20 meters. It was in a pit that had just been smashed out by him, at least 10 meters deep. The ground is hot and red, and the potholes are still hot. Inside a pair of eyes the size of a farmer's hut, there is a bit of light. Sad humanity, you dare to invade my territory. I will grant you the most desperate death. Something seems to be bad. Troy and Robert thought at the same time that the speed of the other party was indeed beyond their expectations. But in a few blinks, they had already raided their army. This speed is unheard of, and the appearance of the enemy is too shocking. A large number of people around have lost their courage. One by one showed fear, looking at the behemoth close at hand. Although everyone has heard of the power of dragons, when this power appears in front of you in a more outrageous manner, when you look up at a monster as high as an 8-story building, this fear cannot be restrained. It will unconsciously emerge from your heart and make your hairs stand up. Must cheer everyone up. Troy did not answer Shillong's words, but shouted in a deep voice. Everyone, disperse. Don't be afraid. Me, legendary Sword St. Troy fam, and legendary Law St. Robert Wary are with you. This voice is very loud, as if the dawn in the darkness has brought great courage to all those who fear. Drive out the darkness for them. The soldiers cheered up again. That's right. There is nothing to be afraid of. We have 2 legends. All the soldiers immediately follow Troy's instructions and scatter around. Part 1. Chapter 137. Dare to provoke me, to provoke my city of tomorrow. Let you taste despair today. Xylem roared. 4 limbs slam on the ground. Rumbling. The entire area of kilometer is another 10 magnitude earthquake. While shaking up a large number of people, a strong repulsive force spread in all directions. The earth shook wildly, pushes the dust and gravel. Among the human beings close by, thousands of people were bombarded into the air by the repulsive force, and then madly smashed by the gravel in the air. Their bodies are like thin paper, pierced by gravel. Set off a fog. Can't let him go on. Robert, I'm on. You help me. Troy was full of fighting spirit, and the long azure blue fighting spirit extended for dozens of meters. He turned over and immediately jumped off the crown griffin. While fell downward, a dark portal appeared from the void. After Troy fell, he appeared straight behind Shillong, the legendary saber in his hand. Hurricane breath pierced Shillong's scales. Ding! Pushed with a strong force, enough to pierce the scales of the legendary dragon. So you can't make progress here in Shillong. Do not. Maybe it can be said that he stabbed in, pierced 1 millimeter into the scale. Boom! Can't be surprised by the thickness of the opponent's scales. He was pushed out by the powerful repulsion, was shot straight away hundreds of meters. Troy, who was in the air, roared. Magic troops. All are ready to launch. When he finished roaring, The magicians who were behind the troops who had prepared magic had already taken shape. The light of colorful elements illuminates the entire battlefield. Frost, flame, thunder, wind blade, to stab, roared and attacked the black gold dragon in the field. But it's useless at all. These bells and whistles of magic, 100 meters away from Shillong, have been bombarded by the repulsive force and turned into gorgeous fireworks. There are only a few soil thorns, one by one popping up beside him. Was originally about 1.5 meters in length, which can bring death magic to people. Before Shillong was 25 meters in height. It looked like an uneven road. Looks funny. There are also some soil thorns, which were clearly used at the feet of Shillong, but they couldn't pierce his scales and were restrained abruptly. Followed by the arrows of the crossbow. Took advantage of Shillong's repulsive force this time and shot at him one after another. It was originally a powerful arrow that was enough to shoot a target hundreds of meters away, but it was blown away by the strong wind that Shillong gently fanned its wings. Are like dandelions, flying all over the sky. Roar! Silo roared. Dare to provoke my idiots! Turn into fly ash in the flames. The torrent of flames spilled from Shillong's mouth. Is like a flame of extinction. Thousands of degrees of high temperature swept the audience. The air all around is twisting slightly. Some mortals who were burned can only let out a scream. Then the flame poured in from his mouth and nose. But within 3 or 4 seconds, the flesh and internal organs will be burned out. A few seconds later, the ashes are flying. Zero stepped on all fours and walked slowly towards the densest place. Seeing these human beings screaming, running away, and attacking him uselessly, smiled happily. He is very angry. Before he finished building the house, he had nothing to do. In order to improve the combat power of the alien race, he personally turned into a dragon form and practiced against the alien race at the extreme edge of the city to enhance the strength of these guys. I did not expect to be attacked suddenly. This is a shame. The city of tomorrow is the city he just built, carrying his beautiful wishes and future. In the embryonic stage, he was cut in the waist, facing the possibility of collapse. How can he bear it? He must have these idiots regret their reckless attack. Died in regret and despair. Xylem is like an invincible flame-throwing platform. All attacks are ineffective against him. Only he is slowly breathing out flames, pushing forward, bringing death to the crazy people. Unstoppable. Don't disobey. More and more people were burned to death by flames. Behind Shillong's neck, Troy anxiously attacked Shillong. He stood on a scale, slashing and stabbing frantically with his weapon. But it's useless at all. The scales of this strange dragon are too thick. Every time he slashed at the same spot with full strength, the powerful repulsion will blast him directly. He reluctantly found that he had no choice but to take this monster. His legendary weapon is only a legendary elementary quality. Just as he continued to attack without giving up, a voice rang in his mind. Troy, help me trick the dragon's repulsion spell. I want to use a legendary spell to hit him hard, is Robert's voice. Troy glanced at the sky above a kilometer. There gathered a lot of ice energy. There is a group of griffin riders below, tirelessly throwing javelins at the strange dragon. It's a pity that it didn't work at all. The blamed dragon didn't care about it and continued to spit the flame of death forward. Don't worry, but you have to pay attention. The repulsive magic of this strange dragon is very short. The full burst only takes 3 seconds, and the unidirectional one only takes about 1 second, he replied in his heart. Ran quickly behind the strange dragon Wuxia World, online to attack again. The rumbling repulsion knocked him back hundreds of meters. At the same time, Robert in the sky has already driven the royal griffin and rushed toward Shillong. This royal griffin has been blessed with mental resistance spells. Otherwise, he would not dare to come within 100 meters of Shillong. When the distance was only a few tens of meters, Robert flicked the ice ball condensed on the top of the staff. This is the magic he has prepared. 10th level legendary spell. Extremely frozen ice. The legendary mage who developed this spell has used this spell to strike 40,000 soldiers on the battlefield. Within a few kilometers, the world turned into ice. Is hailed as the King of Ice. Although Robert's accomplishments are incomparable with the opponent, as a legendary mage, he will definitely not differ too much after using it. The entire hockey puck smashed down with a cloud of ice mist. At the moment it left the staff, a large area of mist appeared in the air within a kilometer. The temperature of the space is dropping sharply. Zero also felt the temperature change, and a little surprised he glanced at his puck. There are too many mages on the battlefield, and the elements are too chaotic. I didn't notice anyone in the sky casting powerful magic, but it didn't matter. Silo raised his head while the flame in his mouth aimed at the puck. The flame collided with the ice. The sound of chirping, the water mist erupted crazily, and it even turned into a thick fog. People within a kilometer of a radius can't see people a few meters away at all. Shillong looked at the puck colliding with the flames. The puck was unexpectedly strong. It actually faced his flames and continued to fall. Seeing that he was about to fall on him, Shillong's eyes showed mockery. Part 1. Chapter 138. His repulsive force did not explode with all his strength before. The frequency has not reached the limit. Before that, he always had spare energy, knowing that these little bugs would make some tricks. A moment. Boom! The repulsive force broke out again, and it blasted towards the hockey puck. He wants to smash the puck. Let the spells that they have been brewing for a long time come to nothing. Then let these guys who provoke him feel despair and regret. But the next moment, he saw a figure appearing in the fog in front of him, dragging a long blue war spirit. Like wolf smoke, it spread upwards for 100 meters. It was Troy, and his fighting spirit broke out to the extreme at this time, as bright as a star, holding the legendary sword in both hands. Suddenly slashed a sword at Shillong's repulsive belt. He knew that he had no threat to the monster Shillong. This is the sorrow of the soldiers. When they cannot penetrate the dragon scales, then they are not much different from some soldiers. Perhaps the only difference is that life is greater. All hope must fall on Robert. So he broke out all the fighting spirit, cut out the strongest sword slash so far. This sword energy turned into a blue sharp blade visible to the naked eye, reaching a height of tens of meters. With unparalleled power, hit the repulsion belt. Booming when the two collided, the entire repulsion belt was crushed. Sword chi and repulsion belt burst at the same time. The puck finally landed on Shillong. Sneer. When the puck fell on Shillong, it melted, turned into endless air conditioning. Silem's body was covered with a layer of white gas, and then it solidified and turned into frost, and getting thicker, until he freezes his whole body. Seeing this scene, Robert controlled the crowned griffin and fled quickly with others around him. Baiwu instantly icy everything within 100 meters. The ground was covered with a layer of ice, tens of centimeters thick. Immediately afterwards, there was a rumbling explosion. 5 Thunder God spears glowing with blue light burst into the white mist where Shillong was. It's a dragon annihilator. Even if Shillong was frozen by the legendary spell, everyone here did not relax their vigilance, but quickly launched the biggest killer. Boom, boom, boom. 5 consecutive explosions. 5 Thor spears pass through the white mist and hit the target. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief unconsciously. Although this dragon is powerful, but by being attacked like this, he was killed if he wanted to. A blast of cold wind blew, and the white mist gradually dispersed. The strange dragon inside was exposed. His entire dragon was sealed by ice, and his body was covered with a 2-meter thick layer of ice that had solidified to the extreme, and his chest had 5 dragon-killing arrows obliquely inserted. Something seems wrong. These arrows did not smash the frozen dragon into pieces as expected, or through the chest of the dragon. It was like hitting an extremely hard magic iron. Lose power and fall to the ground. Strands of scarlet gold liquid flowed down the tip of the arrow of extinguishing dragon. That is the blood of the black gold monster. It seems to be extremely hot, flowing through the track of the iron spear, burning all the magic patterns inscribed by the dragon slayer. A string of burnt black marks appeared in the flowing past. Kakaka the ice shook slightly. Not good. Robert was shocked when he saw this. Obviously, the series of attacks just now cannot kill this strange dragon. Can't even get serious injuries. At this time, you must not let the other party get out of trouble. Otherwise, they will only have a way to escape an embarrassment. All mages prepare ice spells. Never let this strange dragon break the ice. As Robert's voice fell, all wizards quickly cast ice spells. Robert cast his spells quickly, and one after another high-level ice spells fell against Shillong. Kakaka, seeing that the ice layer on the strange dragon is getting thicker and thicker, it seems that it can temporarily freeze the opponent. There was an abrupt blast, covering the monster dragon. At least 3 meters of ice was instantly shattered under the sun's rays. It turned into a crystal-clear mist over the sky, shining brightly with a strange beauty. But the terrifying monster in front of them gave them no chance to appreciate this beauty. He firmly affects everyone's minds. He's getting bigger. His body swelled in everyone's eyes. From the original height of 25 meters, it has become more than 40 meters. What is the concept of a height of more than 40 meters that's at least as high as 13 or 4 stories? Longway overwhelmed the world, becoming more ferocious than before. The griffins hundreds of meters in the sky were rushed by this momentum and screamed frantically. The knight holding the rope hurriedly wanted to stop it, but even the deep feelings that they had cultivated since childhood could not stop the griffins from going crazy. The whole sky is messed up. Some soldiers from the nearest distance looked at this huge dragon. and their weapons fell to the ground unconsciously, with deep despair in their eyes. They couldn't control their bodies and swayed. I want to move, but I can't move. It seemed to be firmly grasped by an invisible big hand, with heavy shackles on his back. The air seemed to freeze. The entire space is suppressed to the extreme. Shillong lowered his head and quietly glanced at the wound on his chest. Several scales have been shot down there. After being frozen, the rigid scales Wuxia world that online were subjected to severe impact and fell. The wisps of red gold blood are flowing slowly. A faint sensation of pain spreads into Shillong's brain. This is pain. The first time I felt this pain since I was born, he said softly. This time was different from Cthulhu's dream world. At that time, he didn't feel the slightest pain because of the gray gas. This time, he really felt the pain. Although this kind of wound was like a scratch to him, it was still injured. He raised his head and glanced at a distance of kilometers away. He hadn't given up yet, and he was still loading the turret of Dragon Slayer. This seems to be their last hope. In this way, Shillong watched the opponents reloading silently, and then slowly opened the dragon wings behind him, and a huge shadow of more than 120 meters covered the earth. Until the opponent's ballista was fired again, Thunder God's spear blasted at him. His dragon wings stood in front of him instantly. Clank! A harsh metal impact sounded, and terrible waves of air appeared at the intersection of the dragon wing and the lightning spear. The terrible roar almost shattered the eardrums of nearby soldiers. After a stalemate, Thor's spear weakly lost the protection of thunder and fell to the ground. Too weak. Too weak. You only have this strength. Who gave you the courage to provoke me? Shillong roared, moving his limbs and walking forward. At this time, he weighs about 80,000 tons. The exaggerated weight makes each step fall. The ground will leave a huge footprint of 3 or 4 meters deep. Part 1. Chapter 139. There will be a small earthquake on the ground every time Shillong moves. Flames began to flicker on his body. Patches of fire fog filled his body. A circle of invisible fields spread out, and among the gaps in his scales, dazzling white light beams shot out. The air began to heat up, and the space began to twist. He moved forward slowly. All around are the enemies who have been frightened. All the people who were several hundred meters away from Shillong seemed to be in a sea of fire. With every breath, the whole body was burning. They clutched their noses and mouths in pain and fled around. People who were illuminated by the white light beam began to lose their strength quickly, causing dizziness, weakness, nausea, etc. And some even had incontinence directly. Passed out. Others began to hallucinate. In their eyes, the world has undergone tremendous changes, and everything has become blood red and gray. The companions who were originally by their side, worthy of relying on, turned into disgusting monsters full of worms, eyes, tongues, and smelly. Fear is stronger than ever. They seem to have been abandoned by the whole world, but they are weak and they can only whine in place. A priest nervously stepped forward to cast an expulsion spell for a soldier. The gentle white light quickly expelled the soldier's weakness, allowing him to slowly regain some strength, but he did not escape. In this soldier's field of vision, a terrifying monster is wriggling on him. Ah! The soldier roared out of fear. Don't come close to me. Monster! He burst out all his power instantly. Pick up the weapon in your hand and pierce the monster's body with a sword. Why? The priest's eyes were full of disbelief, but in the end he was hacked to death frantically by the soldiers. But in the eyes of this crazy soldier, the monster disappeared. He became happy and attacked all the monsters around him frantically. He wants to change the world back to its original state. The most terrifying thing is that those who were irradiated by white light and were close to Shillong, they also suffered damage from the previous searing domain. Those who lost their power and couldn't escape from the realm began to die quickly because they inhaled a large amount of heat. As Shillong moved more and more people fell to the ground. Howl, vomiting, syncope, death. He is like the of Doomsday, who brought destruction to the world. Mortals cannot look directly, can't get close. The people here have lost the courage to face him. What happened here is like a nightmare that they will never forget. Those who are far away, fortunately not exposed to the radiation, have already howled and turned and fled. They no longer have the courage to continue fighting. Even being a deserter is in danger of being executed. Fortunately, it is strong here to die. A whole army of 20,000 people was defeated at this moment. Seeing this group of soldiers began to rout. Robert, who was still flying in the sky, and Troy on the ground looked at each other. As legends, the two can resist the flame field and radiant light, but they understand that this battle is no longer necessary. Face this monster. Even if it is 10 times more troops, I am afraid it will not help. The level of this monster cannot be estimated at all. This is a terrifying existence beyond recognition. How can mortals be enemies? Robert rode on the royal griffin with a flash and appeared beside Troy, letting Troy get over the back of the griffin. Then a teleporter quickly appeared beneath him, trying to escape. But Shillong had already noticed that the two of them were far superior to the others. How could they let them run? Especially that mage. He is the culprit for the heavy losses in the city of tomorrow. Roar! Xylem roared wildly, and the tail wing moved, showing unparalleled speed again, crossing hundreds of meters in just an instant. Appeared beside them. After his huge body was driven at more than 3 times the speed of sound, the result was a hurricane of dozens of levels forward. The two who didn't have the slightest preparation were thrown off immediately. Immediately, there was an extremely powerful suction force, sucking them back instantly. The two were firmly fixed on a hot iron block. Sneer! The flesh seems to be burned on a red iron block. The two let out a scream and took a breath unconsciously, while the hot air seemed to burn the lungs. The two hurriedly resisted with their fighting spirit and magic power. Only then did they improve slightly. Two legends, like two ants, were easily caught in his paws. Xylem glanced at the two people who hung his forelimb paws at this time, and sneered. 2. Destroy my city. Where are you going? Your Excellency, we are members of the Starland Kingdom. Your move to build a city in the Starland Kingdom mirror has violated the laws of the kingdom. We have the right to expel you. Robert bit his head. He speaks with honorifics. No way. The gap is too big. Not an opponent at all. He wasn't a Taihan who fell into the hands of the enemy and could still be tough. That's just your human law. It can't control me, Xylem replied. I only know that you completely angered me. I was originally a peaceful metal dragon. I developed business, bringing a lot of profits to your country, Wuxia World. Online bring joy to the common people, the nobles, and the whole mankind. But you have increased the tax rate. I built the city by myself, but came to destroy again. Do you really think I have no temper? Your Excellency, we are willing to make up for your loss. Please let us go. Robert begged for mercy. Ha ha ha. Shillong just sneered as he watched the army collapse and fled. Said to the two of them, my residents suffered heavy casualties. You let me break my promise. I once told them, as long as they have citizenship in my city, everyone will be happy, never be violated. We'll get eternal peace. Everyone will be full. We'll wear well. We'll sleep well. But I broke my promise. Many of them died in this attack. You killed them, then the price must be paid. Shillong said at the end. His expression was extremely cold. Even if Robert and Troy were in Shillong's realm, he felt the coldness from the soul. Watch it. How did your soldiers die? Fighting against me is the stupidest decision you have ever made in your life. Ants, turn to ashes under my flame. Shillong said his limbs were lying on the ground, and his head was on the ground. The two guys in his hand were pinched by him. Only the heads were exposed, and the sight was on the soldiers who had fled thousands of meters ahead. What does this dragon want to do? Shillong opened his huge mouth slightly, and the crimson flame in his mouth began to violently surge in it, spinning like a whirlpool. Part 1. Chapter 140. Oh, the voice kept ringing. Finally, Xylem spouted out the flames in his mouth. A beam of bright red flames burst out forward. The pillar of fire is 4 to 5 meters thick. Surge forward against the ground. The ground melted under the high temperature of the pillar of fire, and a huge ditch soon appeared, and everything that stood in front of the pillar of fire turned into ashes. When it crossed a kilometer and a soldier surged from behind, the soldier died without even screaming. Then it becomes an ash fly. The heavy steel armor on him quickly turned into molten iron. The pillar of fire is like a flame demon. As long as it catches up, it is death. It spans a distance of 3 or 4 kilometers. Everything along the way is gone. At least 400 to 500 people will be eliminated in one shot. The ground was flushed red by this pillar of fire, and the surface of the ground was like lava rolling. Shillong turned his head. Slightly the pillar of fire swept to the right. All those who were swept by the pillar of fire were quickly evaporated. Shillong only spent 20 to 30 seconds, turning around in place, and everyone running on the ground was basically dead. Immediately afterwards, he began to use the pillar of fire to attack those who were sitting on the griffin and fleeing. These people have already run out of his attack range, but it doesn't matter. With a flap of his wings, he turned into a red-gold meteor and chased him up. Far away, the pillar of fire attacking 3 or 4 kilometers away reappeared, burning these griffin riders to ashes. It took about 3 or 4 minutes before he wiped out all the 20,000 troops. Of course, if you use nuclear to calm your breath, it may only take a moment. But which fool would grow mushrooms at his door? Now, only the last 2 griffin riders are still running away. These are the last 2 people left by Shillong. The 2 of them looked at the pillar of fire, not far away from time to time, and the companion who was burned to death, and their hearts were full of fear. but they dare not look back. They were swallowed by fear. They could only keep running forward, keep running away, looking back. Even with a glance, death is what greets them. There was a crackling sound. The heartbeats of the two who ran away almost stopped in shock. An extremely powerful hurricane swept past them. The two griffin riders were blown by the wind and turned several somersaults in the sky. They could only hug the griffin under them tightly, trying to make their partners stop their bodies. But the griffins under them seemed to be surrounded by great fear, and during the process of falling, they couldn't hold themselves at all. Instead, he started to scream in fear, and his body was shaking constantly. The two knights slightly raised their heads and looked forward, which was the source of their fear. That terrible black and gold dragon. His eyes as big as two houses are 10 meters in front of him. The pitch-black vertical pupil and the stream of golden particles converging directly took away the last fluke of the two. Their sanity is declining. Began to scream crazy. If this continues, the two will fall directly to the ground, falling from a height of hundreds of meters. Even with their elite status, they will not die on the spot, and they will definitely fall into a half-body. Sad and hateful human beings. This is the price you have to pay. Shillong said slowly. When the opponent was about to fall to the ground, he suddenly reached out his forelimbs and grabbed the two knights. Seems to be a conscious discovery? Ah! The two griffin knights were filled with fear and fell into madness. 2. What do you think after watching this battle? Shillong lowered his head and looked at Robert and Troy, who were caught by a paw. The field and radiant light on his body have long been closed. Turn the paw a little so that they can see themselves clearly. You won. The kingdom's troops were destroyed by you, Troy said tremblingly. He was ashamed of these soldiers and did not carry these hopes that he firmly believed that the battle would be triumphant. These elite troops are all dead. Your Excellency, what do you want? Our troops have already been wiped out by you. Have you been suffocated if you want to come? Robert said carefully. Quite. How can it be possible? The lives of you ants? How can it be compared with the lives of my people? Shillong sneered. Go to for what you have done. Regret it. Afterwards, Shillong used Robert's desperate gaze slightly. The two legends were pinched to death instantly. Dead, so worthless. It's so easy to die, but really died. The gap between them and Shillong itself is too big. So big that Shillong can easily crush them to death. This is also the reason why the two people themselves are in the legend and are not strong. Legend, the end of the week. But it is the starting point for a strong one. As legendary powerhouses, the gap is huge. This gap may be as big as level 0 to 19. Gently shaking off the two legendary corpses, the blood on Shillong's claws quickly evaporated. He glanced at the two griffin riders who were in madness and awakened each other with spiritual magic. After the two of them were slightly awake, they looked at Shillong in fear, shaking all over. You two are lucky. I will let you live, Shillong said in a deep voice. Go back and tell your king. Because of his attack, I have killed and injured countless people. I should have personally died. Go and kill you all. Revenge for my people. But in the essence of the metal dragon, I only want you to compensate me. 1 million lost population Wuxia World. Online 10,000 gold coins. And enough food for 1 million people to eat in the first half of the year. Understand? Ming, understood, a soldier said tremblingly. Retell what I just said. Because of our offensive caused the Dragon Lord to die and wound countless people. We who were originally sinful should all die. But the essence of the dragon, the good dragon, as long as we compensate you, 1 million people, 2 million gold coins, 1 million people eat the first half of the year. Very good. Salem looked at the two humans who had barely finished the retelling, put them down, and then said, Go back. Your king is limited to bring the compensation here within 1 month. Otherwise, I don't mind going to Shillong King City in person. What will happen after that? You don't want to see it, right? Yes, yes, the two soldiers said quickly. In the end, Shillong let them go. The two soldiers rode the griffin and slapped the griffin frantically, and flew away as if to escape. Shillong finally took the two legendary belongings and returned to the city of tomorrow. Now the whole city is fighting the fire, and the orc shamans are healing. However, shamans who can heal are very rare among orcs. In other words, shaman is one of the few professions among orcs, and most shamans are elemental mages. The scene was so busy that it was too busy. The wailing of the wounded and the crying of the dead relatives filled the city of tomorrow. Part 1. Chapter 141. After Shillong returned, he also began to treat the injured. But his healing spells are not too good. Only treat those seriously injured first. On average, it takes about half an hour. This treatment lasted for 3 days and 3 nights before it was over. Shillong squatted on the ground and looked at Kusk in front of him and said, How are the statistics for this casualty? My lord, This time we have killed 552 orcs, 428 humans, 98 harpies, 157 goblins, 104 jackals. A total of 2,674 people died. Many of these people were seriously injured without timely treatment. How many deaths have been granted citizenship? 497 people. Nearly 500. Most of them are humans. Only those humans who are pulled over can directly obtain citizenship. Other people's original slave status, it is not so easy to obtain promotion. 497 people. I am ashamed of them. I originally promised that they would have the happiest life, but they died on the road to happiness. Send someone to count. The families of these dead citizens give them gold coins. 10 gold coins for each house, and 2 gold coins every year thereafter. For 50 years. Shillong took a deep breath. Kusk looked at Shillong in surprise. He couldn't imagine that the owner, who usually stingy, would have such a generous time. It is necessary to compensate 5,000 gold coins in one lump sum, and all of them together, that is 55,000 gold coins. Of course, in actual statistics, it is absolutely impossible to spend so many gold coins. After all, some of the dead have no relatives. Although he is an orc and does not use gold coins in the race, he still has a bit of gold coins. If you think about it carefully, the owner seemed to treat citizens with citizenship, whether they were humans or aliens, and seemed to be good. It can be said that the attitude towards slaves is two extremes. This dragon seemed not as unbearable as he thought. Kusk thought to himself. Then he gave the order and left. Shillong glanced at the guy Armin at this time. The kid had been by his side just now. The atmosphere on the scene made him feel depressed and kept silent. I really want to get back all the gold coins I gave before. I have to pay a lot of gold this time. He gestured with his eyes, wanting to see if this guy could understand what he meant and give some meaning. But this kid couldn't read it at all. A pair of mercury-like eyes looked at him blankly. Shillong, what are you looking at me? Do you want to ask my opinion? I think you did a good job, although it has cost a lot of gold. But it is definitely a metal dragon demeanor, as it should be. Okay, this kid. It seems that the gold coins given to him will be reduced in the future. I am not to blame. You kid doesn't know how to be a dragon. After that, Shillong began to build houses again to make up for those destroyed. Kusk also spent a few days to complete the statistics for Shillong. Then Shillong gave him gold coins and let him distribute them. After a series of consumption, Shillong now only has more than 1 million gold coins in his hand. To be honest, among the humans before, because of this attack, they have been disappointed in the city of tomorrow. They are afraid that the next person to die in the attack is themselves. After all, the human death rate this time is close to 1/5. No one can guarantee that the next person to die is not himself. In the beginning, many humans wanted to sneak away, but he was caught back by the alien sent by Shillong to watch the night. This caused a lot of grievances in their hearts. However, after the supply was issued this time, these people discovered that the terrifying dragon of the city lord was surprisingly good. 10 gold coins. Most of the people fooled here are poor civilians, and many people don't have so much savings in their lives. From now on, the supply of 2 gold coins each year will be much higher than their annual work income. Although they would still be instinctively scared when they saw Shillong and avoid getting close to him as much as possible, their evaluation of this strange dragon has improved a lot. This is definitely a good dragon, and is a very responsible city owner. In fact, their own gold coins are not used much now, because their housing has been settled by Shillong, and food is temporarily provided by aliens. But there is a saying that they don't panic when they have money in their hands, and they still feel at ease with gold coins. Now Shillong City of Tomorrow has problems with the trading system, but these can be solved, as long as Shillong King City's compensation is in place. He will cut off the free food for these humans, and then let them demand food to maintain the normal trading, although it may cause dissatisfaction from some greedy people. But Shillong is not a soft persimmon. The whole city is his word, and he will never be merciful to an uncooperative fool. Starlong King City. Inside the palace arsenal, His Majesty the King is still caressing his sword leisurely. It seems indifferent to the army just dispatched. In fact, he doesn't need to care about it. 2 legends, plus 20,000 armies, and 5 dragon annihilators. Even the legendary ancient dragon dare not touch the edge. Our dear Majesty, the King really can't think of the possibility of accidents. That's why WuxieWorld.online, he can still be so leisurely. But just as he was wiping his sword, there was an anxious voice outside the gate. Get out of here. I want to see your Majesty. I have something important to report to your Majesty. You wait. This is the voice of the guard. But before he finished speaking, His Majesty the King spoke. Let the outside come in. There was a little dissatisfaction in the voice. Yes, your Majesty. The door was opened with a click. 2 soldiers in chainmail came in. Their bodies are very messy and their faces are very dirty. There was still a smell on his body, and he obviously came here directly after returning from the battlefield. As a legend, His Majesty the King has very keen senses in his body. After smelling this smell, he frowned unconsciously. The action of wiping the blade with his hand also stopped. Are you the soldiers on this expedition? Why are you so embarrassed? His Majesty the King can recognize each other's attire and which army it belongs to. At the same time, there was a faint feeling in my heart. Your Majesty, we are defeated, completely defeated. Everyone is dead, all dead. A soldier was very excited when he saw the king, as if he had found the opposite. As he spoke, tears were dripping from the corners of his eyes. The face became more dirty. This face seemed to have been soiled by tears before. What do you mean? His Majesty's heart beat, suddenly slowed by a beat. Taking a deep breath, the premonition of uncertainty in my heart became stronger. Part 1. Next up is Chapter 143. And no, Chapter 142 isn't missing. It was just an author's note. Part 1. Chapter 143. He snarled frantically. That evil dragon. How dare to deceive me like this? Take my border. Kill my soldiers. Destroy my legend. I haven't found him to settle accounts. He dared to make such a request. Rude. Really rude. Damn it. Who does he think he is? Who does he think he is asking for? My Alio Shillong will never agree to such a rude request. Your Majesty, if you don't agree, the dragon said that he would come and fetch it himself. I am afraid that the entire kingdom will be destroyed by that time. Everyone will be killed by him. The soldier was anxious. He knew very well Shillong's strength. In his impression, Shillong is already in existence that mortals cannot match. Ha ha ha! The king laughed frantically. Kill me? Kill all the people? Okay, if he has this ability, let him try it. He laughed angrily. In addition to him, there are 4 legends in the entire Starlon King City. The strength of these legends is all above Troy and Robert. A total of 5 legends. There are more than 200,000 troops left in the royal city. 20 or 30 dragon annihilators. He dare to come. I dare to kill. The king is almost mad. No, no, Your Majesty, if you don't agree to the evil dragon's request, it will die. Everyone will die. No one is immune. No one can fight him. The soldier said with a look of fear. Bastard, do you think the ancient dragon is invincible? It's just a 40-meter-high lizard, an arrogant who has just entered the stage of the ancient dragon. He just has to dare to come. I will let him come back and forth. The king roared. No, impossible. We can't beat him, the soldier cried. Idiot, get out of me. Get out. From now on, you are no longer a soldier of the Starland Kingdom. I don't need a useless soldier like you in my kingdom. Get out, coward. The king was angry and angry. He slapped him again and slapped him several meters away. His entire left cheek was swollen. Your Majesty, you have to believe me. Mortals can't compete with monsters. If you defy his orders, everyone will die. The soldier cried, moving his knees to the king's side, to death. Holding thighs. Go away, fool. The king kicked the opponent angrily. Guard, get me out of this idiot. Let him leave the palace forever. The 2 guards heard the king's roar and immediately came in and took the soldier away. The soldier was being held up and crying. It will die. It will die. Damn bastard. His Majesty, the king cursed. He glanced at the other soldier who had been fanned to the ground and was still talking madly on the ground at this time. He hurriedly asked someone to carry it out. The king stayed alone in the armory for a while. The more he thought about it, the more angry he got. Think of him as the master of a country. Only he bullies people. Ever been bullied so much? Soderbergh Chamber of Commerce. The king gritted his teeth and hated him. Suddenly, he thought of Andre of the Soderbergh Chamber of Commerce, who seemed to be living in the inner city. This made him feel revenge. Although he already knew that Andre was a grown-up golden dragon, as a legend, how could he be afraid of a grown-up golden dragon? He put on a suit of armor and took the people in the palace, a 19th level mage, and the 2 immediately moved towards the inner city. You, Silent Soderbergh, is not very arrogant. I'm going to capture your friend today. He has completely ignored the consequences of offending a pure metal dragon like the golden dragon. The whereabouts of the king and the mage were relatively secret, and the 2 of them hurried past, wearing large cloaks. But it was empty. Except for the original servants, Andre, Neferu, the 2 known dragons are actually gone. The king and the mage stayed nearby for one night without seeing the 2 dragons coming back, knowing that the other party had escaped. For this reason, he had no choice but to return to the palace. At this time, after a day, the king sent all the troops to death. The news of the death of the 2 legends has spread from the palace. The entire Starlon King City was in panic. The 2 patron saints of the kingdom actually died in the battle against the dragon. How can this make them not panic? The evil dragon is still on their land. At today's morning meeting, All the nobles and cabinet officials were discussing this matter, but nothing was discussed at all. It is obviously impossible to continue sending people to attack. There is also the issue of compensation, which has also reached the ears of all nobles. Some people want the king to pay compensation, but they don't want their city to be stared at by a terrifying dragon, because they are not paying the money. And some consider for the country, all rejected this rude request. Shillong lions really opened their mouths. Compensation for this million people will kill people. There are only 7 to 8 million people in Shillong City. Although the entire Starling Kingdom claims to have over 100 million people, they are all scattered in various places. Where will they get it out? How to divide each of them? There are 2 million gold coins. 1 million people have food for half a year. These two are enough to empty half of the savings of the national treasury. In the end, the meeting ended. Having said that, the two guys who were frightened by Shillong did not stay in Shillong City in the end. They looked at Shillong City and kept muttering. They will all die, rebelling against the doomsday god. The one who destroys the dragon will die. Destruction is bound to come, and all beings will die. The two of them are already full of fears about Shillong. Wuxia World. Online are crazy. Finally, they disappeared, near General Sword Academy, next to a tombstone. At this time, there were 7 men and women in expensive clothes standing here, each of them handsome and beautiful. There's an extraordinary power on him. Everyone dare not peek at it. A one-handed sword was worn around his waist. There are a lot of flowers on the tombstone, and the sky is a little gloomy, but dark clouds cover it. The atmosphere at the scene was very heavy. These 7 young people with outstanding temperament stood silently looking at the tombstone in place, silent for a long time. Among the 7 young people, one is William, and the other 6 are of the same class as William. They were all the apprentices of Troy. As I said before, there were more than a dozen apprentices in Troy, but many of them had traveled outside, and there was no news of Troy's death. Although this tombstone belonged to Troy, there was nothing in it. Those who died in the hands of the dragon must have no bones? The 7 apprentices remained silent. I don't know how long it took. A young man broke the silence and said angrily, "Teacher is dead. I will avenge him. All of us together." "Will you die together?" A woman said coldly. "Are you scared?" The man who spoke before glared at the woman. "Yeah, I'm scared," the woman said lightly, not at all angry at the other party's words. 2 legends, 20,000 soldiers, and 5 dragon destroyers cannot kill the dragon. "Of course I am afraid. I'm afraid to die." The woman's expression was extremely cold. Part 1. Chapter 144. Coward. "Teacher Luz has been treating you very well," the man scolded. "What about the coward?" "I'm just a woman." "What's wrong with being a cowardly woman?" the woman asked indifferently. "You." When the man heard the woman's words, he was a little angry, but some couldn't refute it. To the dragon, "We're like a few ants on the side of the road. How do you think a few ants can rely on their own power to kill the dragon? I'm afraid that the other party accidentally walks on the road and will trample us to death." The woman's expression was a little sad. "Then wait until we all become legends. When we are together, we can definitely kill him," the man said. "Legend. Legend. Do you think all of us can become legends?" The woman looked at the man coldly. "Could you not be so naive? Do you think the legend is the Chinese cabbage on the street? Achievements can be made? I can assert, among us can be legendary. No more than 2. The man was silent. He could not refute. "Then forget it. The teacher is dead for nothing? We don't do anything?" he asked rhetorically. If he felt that he did nothing, he would be ashamed of the teacher's cultivation and would make him feel guilty. No one can answer him. Everyone is silent. William sat quietly near the tombstone of Troy. He didn't listen to the conversation between a man and a woman before, but just sat quietly, gently rubbing the tombstone with his hand. Until William, "Tell me what to do. You are the most talented among us." A man finally brought the topic to William. Yeah, William stopped stroking and looked at the man behind him, asking questions with some confusion. "Tell me, what do we do if the teacher died this time?" the man asked again. "I don't know," William replied lightly. He really didn't know how he would deal with the dragon that the godlike teacher could not even escape. After speaking, he stopped talking and stopped paying attention to these brothers. In his mind, what the teacher said when he left 2 days ago still remained. Amidst the heroic laughter, the teacher said confidently, "Don't worry, William. I can come back here and stand in front of you in less than 10 days. It's ironic. Now he died so easily." William sat quietly, not knowing how long it had passed. There was a light rain in the sky. Patter. The icy raindrops dripped on his body, which made him recover. Found that the brothers around him had disappeared. He sighed and stood up slowly. "Teacher, you, still too weak. So weak that you can't even escape. How strong human beings are in front of those powerful races. They are so vulnerable. Is my goal always too small in the eyes of some monsters? Knew it. Humans have limits. Being weak in this world is a sin. Teacher, You have committed a serious crime, and unforgivable. At the end, William stood up slowly and left here. Shillong Kingdom border, blue and white forest side. Inside the city of tomorrow, there is a huge open space in the center. Shillong squatted in his original form. Now he will not hide his prototype specially, but will change his body shape according to the occasion. In front of him were Andre and Neferu with extremely complex expressions. In addition, there are two other guys who surprised Shillong. One person and one dog. A woman in a red dress, a red-haired, do not look at the eyes will make people feel very powerful, but looking at the eyes, there's a silly wolf dog. At this time, the two dragons, one man and one dog, both looked at Shillong's true body a little complicated. Two dragons just feel the thunder rolling. Where did the said little brother go? You said you were young and grown up. We finally reluctantly believed it. But now, this one is too big? This is no longer the dragon of uncles and uncles. It's the dragon of the least grandparents' generation. Just like you. Tell me you are 40 this year. Do you think we are fools? Are these low-power dragon beasts? At this moment, the two dragons looked at Shillong's eyes. It was the look you thought of us as fools. As for this dog, the fear in his eyes grew stronger. Damn it, it's so big. Is this an ancient dragon? Mom, who is still in hell? Tell you a bad news. Your son, I am afraid you will never be able to get rid of this dragon again. I'm afraid I will be his lackey until I die. Mom, I will miss you in the main material plane. I wish you all the best. The last woman in red was Julia. She looked at Shillong with a red face, her hands tightly hugging her body, a very excited look, and she kept saying, so big, so strong, so amazing. This is the strongest dragon with invincible power. This woman seemed to like Shillong's real body very much. Shillong's eyes moved down slightly, and her eyebrows were raised. This woman, her pants actually have water stains. Is this a pervert? You can have estrus on a terrifying dragon. Shillong was shocked. Julia also seemed to see Shillong's gaze. Her blushing face smiled slightly. It might be a bit nasty to say, but I'm excited. Oh. She was talking Wuxia World. Online the body was shaking again, and she was very excited. Even the two dragons around her looked at her with a perverted look, and the other dog was no exception. This woman, ill. How can I get estrus on such a terrifying guy? No one else. Shillong turned his head slightly, not wanting to see this perversion. But he still asked the question, why did the four of you come here together? Come here to take refuge. Andre is no longer entangled with Shillong's size. He is bigger than him anyway. Instead, he said to Shillong with a serious look, Julia said you wiped out the kingdom's offensive troops. Is this true? Yes. All annihilated. Only 2 livelihoods are left. Let them go back and take the talk. This. Andre frowned when he heard this, and Neferu's eyebrows jumped. I heard that the kingdom dispatched 20,000 troops this time. 2 legends, you killed them all? Andre took a deep breath. Yes. This. Andre was a little speechless before he said for a long time. This is too much. It goes against the survival of the metal dragon. They did it first, Shillong retorted. They launched an offensive on my city from a long distance. My citizens suffered heavy casualties. How much did you hurt? Andre frowned. There are more than 2,500 people, including 500 citizens. Synopsis replied. Then you killed them 20,000, of course. Part 1. Chapter 145. Don't think this seems too much? Originally, we built a city on the border of their country, which was a violation of their laws. Andre said. That's just their law. When will we be able to control our metal dragon? In their kingdom, we should respect their laws. Andre persuaded. No, I won't recognize your words. No matter what the land, there is no owner. The division of these territories is just their wishful thinking. The law is also stipulated by them. It is used to restrain people who are weaker than them. Can't control us. Brother Andre, is it true that after the dragon retired from the main stage of history due to ancient wars, should the living habits of humans still follow human rules? We are Metal Shillong, yes, but it's not a lizard under their law. We will help the weak, but will not be bound by the weak. They attack first. If they dare not fight back, what is the difference between me and a lizard? Those who support us will be treated kindly, and those who provoke us will be destroyed. This is what our metal dragon should do. When Shillong spoke, the stream of golden particles in his eyes surged. Obviously, my heart is not calm. I think so too. Those stupid humans. Since they dare to provoke the noble metal dragons, then it is necessary to teach them some lessons. Alman agreed with Shillong very much. Neferu and Andre looked at each other and sighed helplessly. Okay, all right. They are unwilling to continue this topic. Synopsis was also unwilling to continue speaking. He looked at Julia and said, What are you doing here? Didn't you make a temporary home in Shillong City? Come to see you. Julia gasped excitedly. We haven't seen you for a long time. I miss you so much. You didn't tell me when you were here. Fortunately, I found Andre and they came together. Are we not good friends? I'm very boring here, and it doesn't make sense for you to come here. Xylem said. It's okay. I just have to look at you, she said. Shillong. Forget it. But what do you mean by taking refuge? Someone wants to pay you more? Of course. You killed the kingdom's 20,000 troops, plus 2 legends. After the news goes back, Andre and Neferu are very dangerous. If it wasn't for my prompt, the king must have done something to them. Julius said. What? Shillong was slightly stunned. The king of Shillong Kingdom dared to take action against Golden Dragon? Tolerant of him being stunned, the Golden Dragon generally exists as the leader of the 5 dragons of the Metal Dragon clan. Among the nobles in the whole world, the reputation is very big. They are willing to help the weak, crusade against rebellion, punish sins, and help the kingdom stabilize the rebellion. If a Golden Dragon travels on the mainland, will it encounter danger? Of course. When they fight crime, they may fail, or someone who hates them may act on them. But these forces are without exception chaotic and evil forces, and they are hard to find. I have never heard of the fact that a power of the human kingdom dares to deal with the Golden Dragon in an open and fair manner. Maybe, but Shillong didn't know. Are they not afraid of other metal dragons coming over to trouble them? You know, the metal dragon race has some connection with almost all kind races. Offending the metal dragon is extremely irrational for a kingdom. Maybe they won't do it directly, but the kingdom will be squeezed out by other forces. National trade is extremely prone to problems. The state unit, unlike the rats in the gutter, has too many worries. For this reason, Shillong directly ignored the problems that Andre might encounter when he fought back against the kingdom. How dare they? Don't underestimate the madness of human beings. Many times, the demise of a country is not destroyed from the outside. It is because of the mad human itself, shattered from the inside. Julius suddenly became serious. Shillong took a deep breath, indeed. In the depths of his soul, the human memory began to recover. The various cases in the previous life all tell Shillong what a crazy creature human beings are. Reason is not worth mentioning in front of madness. Now, what are you going to do? Have you been here to develop your city of tomorrow? Although it has been built well, it is far from becoming a qualified city, Andre asked. Soon it will become a qualified city, Shillong said. Huh? Andre was taken aback for a moment. What do you want to do? In a month, you will know. Shillong did not say clearly, but said meaningfully. Armin didn't understand what Shillong meant, scratching his head with his paw, but he didn't ask any questions. In fact, Shillong knew in his heart that 99% of his compensation would be ignored by the king of the Starland Kingdom. Because his request was too much. If he sits in the opposite position, he won't agree. But it doesn't matter if you don't agree. He will use his power. Go tell the fat sheep who delivered it to the door and annoy him, the future price. Gradually he feels his power is strong, and he is more and more willing to use his power. There seems to be a voice in his mind, urging him all the time. If you see something unpleasant, just kill it. If you don't obey orders, just kill. Everyone must surrender to him. He is the ruler of this world, because he has the strongest power. Shillong knew that this was a sequelae of using too much power recently and the power of Cthulhu. The stronger your power, the more you want to use it. This is instinct. You'll be unwilling to think with your head. Because, as long as you use power, you can easily break all the rules of the world. Use strength to create new rules that are beneficial to yourself. This is a common problem with 5-color dragons, but metal dragons have been constraining them. As for the influence of the heretic god's power, Zero will temporarily eliminate it by burning his body with flames in all directions after a period of time. As for the complete elimination, he has no way yet. The power of invincibility Wuxia world online is like a poison. It will make people addicted to it. For this reason, he is always alert to himself, fearing to get lost under this extremely powerful force. But he also hopes to use it to create a truly peaceful world. Therefore, there are some bottom lines that he will never touch. But he also did not allow those ants to dare to crawl on his head. Because of Andre's escape, the Soderbergh Chamber of Commerce in the Kingdom of Starlane was dead. But it doesn't matter. Shillong is not panicking at all. He will personally go over and retrieve what he wants in a month's time. However, Shillong is now staying in the city of tomorrow, and he is not doing nothing. He has started building houses again. After all, in a month's time, we have to welcome 1 million new arrivals. How can there be less houses? Part 1. Chapter 146. For this reason, he also conscripted Andre and Neferu. Of course, only 2 dragons were not enough, and he conscripted all the magical spells from the foreign race. Then began to build. He himself was responsible for transporting the soil from the earth elemental plane, and the others, as well as the earth elemental, were responsible for the construction. However, although these guys are crowded, they have too little magic power, and they need to rest for a day or two before persisting. In the end, 1 month later, Shillong himself controlled the earth element and accounted for more than 95% of the construction share. Really is the rebirth of a model worker. Within a month, Shillong built tens of thousands of houses. These houses are different from the more exquisite houses with compartments before. There is only one embryo, and there is no partition inside, which he intends to use as a general shop. After all, if you follow the previous steps, 1 month is really not enough to live in 1 million people. Even if Shillong becomes a perpetual motion machine. This month passed, and as Xylem thought, the Xinglong kingdom ignored his rude compensation at all. He didn't seem to take his words to heart at all. He knows that some things must be seen with their own eyes so that people can realize the despair in them and compromise. Regarding this, he didn't say much to others, so he flew directly into the sky and headed towards King Star Lantern City. In the sky, only a beautiful stream of red gold remained, and the long tail wings stretched very long. Occasionally, when someone sees it, they will only lament the beauty of the streamer. The interior of King Star City. Did the whole launching really do nothing? Of course not. The King City has now entered a state of full preparation. Inside and outside the city, there are patrolling soldiers everywhere, wearing armor, holding huge swords and spears. 20 or 30 dragon annihilators have been scattered in the royal city. All 5 legends are in place. All activities in the palace. Early this morning, His Majesty the King sat on the golden throne, listening to the report of the cabinet officials below, somewhat absent-minded. The anxiety in his heart gradually expanded. The words of the 2 lunatic soldiers had been reverberating in their minds. For this reason, he actually issued an order a few days ago. Let the whole city enter the highest state of alert. Order all the legends in the city to prepare. Also pushed out 20 or 30 dragon destroyer. How crazy this is! Many people do not understand the king's order, although they also know the compensation demand of that crazy dragon. But that's crazy talk. How could a dragon really dare to attack the royal city of a kingdom? The ancient dragon dare not do this. But the king just ordered. This even felt crazy to him, just because his mind is full of the crazy looks of the previous 2 soldiers. He propped his head and was shocked on the throne. Below him, an official who had just reported to him coughed softly. Your Majesty, Your Majesty. Huh? The king was interrupted by his thoughts and looked at the official with some impatience. What's up? Your Majesty. Did you hear what I just said? What? Say it again. Your Majesty. Your increase in the film tax rate and the recent demise of the Soderbergh Chamber of Commerce have put everyone in the film industry at risk, and the prospects are not as good as before. Okay, I see. Anyone else has anything to say? The king waved his hand impatiently. The people below also found the king's carelessness, so they didn't speak wisely. The meeting soon dissipated, and the worried king left the palace and came to the uppermost balcony of the palace, looking at the direction of the blue and white forest from a distance. He just watched quietly. Until an hour passed, the scenery in front of him remained unchanged. It is like a still picture scroll, delicate and beautiful. He smiled slightly. The anxiety in my heart calmed slightly. How a light breeze passed. A figure suddenly appeared beside the king. He looked 70 or 80 years old with a short goatee. Looks very lean. A scepter inlaid with 5-colored gemstones resided in his hand. Why are you always upset these days? Are you afraid of the strange dragon coming over? Someone asked. I don't know why these days, it's always the case. According to common sense, the strange dragon will never come over. But think about it carefully. According to common sense, that monster dare not kill the 2 legends of our country. But he did that. The king turned his head to look at the visitor. Ah, my dear Majesty, you were cursing that strange dragon every day a week ago, saying that if you dare to come, you must look good. Are you so afraid now? It really doesn't look like your style. The visitor laughed, but then he sighed slightly. It's a pity that Robert has a very good talent, and he died soon after becoming a legend in Troy. Yeah, I don't believe it. I would do such a stupid thing. The king smiled bitterly. The 2 legends said that you die and you die, making my heart more uneasy. Relax. I am here. Nothing will happen to this country, said the visitor. Of course I believe you. You are the strongest magician in our country. The famous sage of miracles, Fernando Reese. That's right. As long as I am here, this country will always exist. Fernando Reese said. The body hidden in the robe seemed to be filled with a little ominous aura. You said, should I really compensate the strange dragon? The king suddenly asked. Don't be foolish. My dear Majesty. Fernando smiled. Ha! I'm kidding you. If the dragon dares to come, Mr. Lao Fernando will kill him. The king laughed. Kill him? Of course. This is our place. Fernando smiled. When the king heard this, he laughed and said for a long time, Okay, the wind is almost blowing. Let's go. After that, he turned around and was about to leave. Huh? What is that? Fernando said in a puzzled voice. The king turned around and saw the distant horizon. Suddenly, a red golden streamer appeared. The long track trailed behind. There are also flashes of fleeting sparks. Wuxia World. Online looks very beautiful. This is a meteor, but this meteor is really beautiful. The king said in his heart. The meteor is flying far away in the sky, and the speed is extremely fast. It tilted down slightly and flew towards the kingdom. It doesn't seem to be right. If this goes on, the meteor will fall in King Star City, said the king. It doesn't seem to be. It is indeed falling towards King Star City, and it will come in 10 seconds. Fernando said. Then please, teacher. Yeah, Fernando replied. His mouth was like a convulsion, but within a second, he completed a 9th level spell. In the void, earth element and fire element seemed to appear out of thin air. Part 1. Chapter 147. The two quickly combined and became a stone ball with a diameter of tens of meters. The exterior of the entire stone ball was wrapped in red flames. From a distance, it looks like a small sun. Fernando lightly pushed the cane, and the stone ball turned into a streamer and smashed towards the meteor. The stone ball is extremely fast and has reached the speed of sound. Two high-speed, moving meteors collided instantly. Bright sparks erupted from the sky. The sky was reddened by large flames. Then it was extinguished by the wind. The red-gold meteor that hit Shillong City was not damaged in the slightest. And slowed down. It smashed Fernando's meteorite and did not change the direction of his behavior. In the silent sky, only the Qijin meteor is getting closer. Almost just the next blink, it has already fallen towards Shillong City, and its goal is Shillong Palace. At this time, it is too late to stop. The meteor is getting bigger and bigger. With a bang, it slammed into the forbidden air field originally arranged in the sky. This is a forbidden air zone that every human king will have in King City. It is used to prevent a surprise attack by the enemy air force. Ordinary adult dragons break into the sea, but it is only a stone cow entering the sea, but the meteor speed has not been reduced, and the next instant, it will break through the forbidden air field. Directly hit the defensive barrier of the palace. Boom! The barrier was like a piece of broken glass. After being hit by a red-gold meteor, it didn't even stop for 0.01 second. The Qijin meteor fell towards the palace again. At this time, because of the close distance, the king and Fernando finally saw the true face of the meteor. Amazingly, it is the black gold monster that the whole city is on guard this time. The distance between the two sides is still hundreds of meters. Fernando put a hand on the king's shoulder swiftly. At the same time, Shillong finally fell. With a huge roar, he slammed into the palace with the brakes. Although he had finally reduced his speed, his destructive power was still extremely amazing. The entire palace of the king's palace, originally covering an area of 3 or 4 football fields, a stalwart building with a height of 100 meters, was crashed instantly at the moment, turned into rubble scattered around the sky. Smoke filled the sky. Asylum flapped his wings twice, and instantly slapped the enveloped smoke and dust, slowly flying out of the small pit several meters below him. Originally, he wanted to make a surprise attack and take the king directly, but he didn't expect the mage beside him to react so quickly. In an instant, it directly led people to flash and appeared on the top of a palace 100 meters away. 2 people were standing on the round roof with a long lightning rod. It was the king and Fernando. At this moment, the two of them looked at Shillong with extremely solemn expressions. Sometimes, you really only know how much pressure is when you face it yourself. A super dragon more than 40 meters high, flapping its wings, watching them quietly, the eyes of the golden particle stream flickering, cold and merciless. His dragon is overwhelming. There are a few soldiers on the ground who cannot withstand this coercion. Lie directly on the ground. Shillong was also looking at each other at this time. This was the first time Shillong saw the king of the Starland Kingdom, and he had only seen it in the portrait before. The king gave Shillong the feeling that he was a local tyrant. That's right, it's a local tyrant. The equipment on his body at this time was extremely gorgeous, and in Shillong's eyes, each one had gathered a lot of magic power. This kind of magic power is not under the previous Troy Saber, an absolute legendary item, and there are as many as 8. A 2-handed sword, a golden lion armor, savage lion belt, golden boots, an inner armor, and a crown. 2 rings. Compared with this king, Troy is a pauper. The mage next to him also has a lot of legendary equipment, about 5 pieces, and the magic reaction in his body is very high, 2 or 3 times that of the previous one. Shillong also discovered an interesting thing. The aura on this old wizard man was somewhat similar to the demolic he had encountered before. Entangled with death, the strength of these two people is definitely far better than the 2 legends before. According to the agreement, 1 month later, that is today, I am here to ask for compensation, but it seems that you are not ready, my dear king. Shillong quietly looked at the 2 opposite people and said, Compensation? Don't be kidding. I haven't asked you to settle the account because of you building a city on the border of our country. You actually brought it to the door? The king, who was clad in rich gold, said tightly with the sword in his hand. Originally, I was a peaceful metal dragon, but you attacked my city and almost destroyed it. I must seek justice for my citizens. Get justice? The king sneered. You killed me 2 legends. I'm also looking for you to settle accounts with the 20,000 army. But you are a good dragon? Stop laughing. You who built a city on the border of the kingdom. Not worthy of being called Shillong. You broke the law. This is your human law. It can only be used to restrain the weak. And I am stronger than you, so you must strictly abide by my rules. Shillong said. Stronger? The king seemed to hear some joke. Ha laughed, and after a while, suddenly roared. Then try it. Who is stronger? Shillong's eyes were cold, and he immediately activated gravity. The king and Fernando, who were 100 meters away, only felt that a few tons of heavy objects were suddenly on their bodies. They were overwhelmed without the slightest accuracy. The huge gravity made their bodies penetrate the roof below them. Pang's click fell down. Afterwards, Shillong moved, and his huge body slammed into the palace 100 meters away. The entire palace burst into pieces the moment he broke in. The sky was full of smoke, but it didn't block Shillong's vision. The king and wizard who were supposed to be on the ground disappeared. Appear 100 meters behind him. A huge soil thorn protruded from the ground, and it pierced Shillong's body with a bang. But the next moment, the soil thorn, which was more than 20 meters long, cracked every inch. How can mud thorn steel plate Wuxia World.online be effective? Just when the mage was about to continue his hands, a huge suction hit them, and he and the king's body flew towards Shillong uncontrollably. In the blink of an eye, they flew out dozens of meters, and when they were about to hit Shillong, the 2 disappeared again. Then Shillong used gravity several times, but was avoided by the opponent. As a legendary fighter of the king, he didn't dare to do anything with Shillong. The king is not an idiot. There is such a big difference in body size between the 2 sides. The other side has so many weird abilities and thunderous speed. Close combat is afraid that it will not take less than 2 seconds to be photographed into meat sauce. Therefore, His Majesty can only rely on Fernando to escape. And Fernando is worthy of being the strongest magic sage in the kingdom. He is superb with one-hand flashing technique, and there is almost no interval time. When dealing with a large monster like Shillong, which is fast but not very flexible, he actually started to play peekaboo. Part 1. Chapter 148. Fernando kept flashing, and then tentatively used spells to attack Shillong. But the result is very bad. For all the 9th level spells he could cast quickly, the opponent stood in place and touched him, without any response. It takes time to cast legendary spells. He took the king with him, and it was too late to escape. Where is the time to cast the legendary spell? He can only hide and seek with this strange dragon like a mouse. And the process shocked the king, because just get caught. The 2 must die. After a short delay, the troops of the Kingdom Guard finally arrived. Thousands of griffin riders in the sky make the whole sky dark. A group of elite archers in full outfit have also approached. At the forefront of the team are 4 giant golems over 30 meters tall. The golem is holding a huge shield. The whole body is filled with blue fluorescent light, and there are layers of defensive spells blessing it. This is a defensive golem specially designed to deal with large monsters. Its defense is strong enough to suppress ordinary legendary dragons in hand-to-hand combat. These war machines have one in each direction. Although they were still hundreds of meters apart, everyone surrounded Shillong in a group. 3 other legends have arrived, a priest, a mage, and a marksman. Seeing the arrival of his own army, Fernando finally stopped running around like a mouse, but stayed behind a giant shield golem. The king looked at Shillong and sneered. Stupid lizard, you have been surrounded by us. Standing behind the golem, the king's courage finally returned. He pointed at Shillong with the legendary sword in his hand, as if he was going to wipe out the frustration just now. Everyone is in place, seeming to have surrounded the monsters in the field. Shillong glanced around. These soldiers don't have much fear on their faces, and they may have been given a group of spiritual resistance spells before they came up. Being dragged to the present is really beyond his expectation. It took a lot of time. Originally, Shillong didn't want to cause too much damage to the city, but now it seems to think too good. The problem that originally wanted to be solved gently, in the end still needs to use invincible power. Now, he has a desire to accomplish in his heart. Compared with this desire, even if some people's lives are sacrificed, it must be fulfilled. He looked at the king with cold eyes and a sneer of disdain at the corner of his mouth. He moved his limbs slowly and gracefully, as if the surrounding ruins of the palace had been destroyed and turned into a stage. Every time he fell, the ground would shake and groan, overwhelmed. Shillong gradually walked over, stood in front of the 30-meter-high golem, and looked at it quietly for a moment. It's ridiculous. These toys can actually make a trash that was as timid as a mouse have the courage to face me. Is the of courage giving you such courage? Lizard, put away your arrogance. I will let you know. The strength of an individual is simply vulnerable to the kingdom's army. The corner of the king's eyes fluttered slightly, resisting the urge to curse, and he shouted in a deep voice. Archer, shoot! The wizard launches a combined spell. With this order, the archers who had drawn their bowstrings early shot. The arrows are like locusts shooting densely at the huge monsters in the field. And the huge monster, just gently inflaming its wings, instantly blew a dozen-odd hurricane in place, and all the arrows were blown away. However, one of the arrows shining with golden light penetrated through the wind pressure and shot into Shillong's neck in a flash. Clang with a soft sound, after the arrow hit, it couldn't cause effective damage to the scale armor on the neck. It is the same as a normal bow and arrow shot on an iron block, weak to fall to the ground. Ground thorns, wind blades, ice thorns, and fireballs tens of meters long all hit Shillong. Afterwards, it was swept by a circle of huge repulsive forces from all directions, bursting into pieces, turning into fireworks in the sky. Rumble. When these magics were crushed, the repulsion belt continued to spread forward. Large tracts of soil and rocks are dancing in the air, until there was a roar. The repulsion hit the golem at the forefront of the quartet team. A layer of ripples suddenly surged on the huge shield that was as high as the golem. The blue light is bright. Click, click. The complexion of the person hiding behind the golem instantly changed. I saw that the huge golem, which was written by their poems as an unbreakable barrier, was actually pushed back slowly by the repulsion. Several unlucky guys who didn't have any preparation were instantly crushed into meat sauce. The soldiers around turned into birds scattered. 2 ditches several meters deep, 6 or 7 meters wide, and 10 meters long were pulled out by the golem on the ground. Finally, under the horrified gaze of a group of people, it stopped going backwards, and the defensive ability of the golem did not disappoint them in the end. Although it retreated more than 10 meters, it did not cause any damage. This made everyone breathe, and their courage gradually picked up. As long as it's okay. Really, the golem can withstand the attack of this strange dragon. Shillong also glanced at the golem unexpectedly. He had already exploded with full force just now. This degree of repulsion can definitely blast a 10,000-ton heavy object for tens of meters. But I didn't expect that this golem looked fancy, and it was actually quite useful. Evil dragon, today, this place is your burial place. Seeing the golem, the king regained his confidence. All mages, give me full open space, forbidden domain. With the king's order, the sky became gloomy, 50 or 60 meters above Silem's head, covered by layers of gravity. Because there are too many wizards casting spells, this gravity belt simply distorts the light. Do something useless. Silem said that he had come to the golem, and then stood up in front of everyone. At this time, his height has reached 50 or 60 meters because of the relationship between man and standing. He is like a big man standing in front of the child of the golem. Then, with a move of his forelimb, he slapped it suddenly. Clang! Shillong's claws were thrown on the giant shield of the golem Wuxia world. Online, the giant shield that can bring people infinite safety for 20 to 30 meters was slumped down immediately. Then he was pushed backwards and hit the golem. A more terrible explosion sounded. The 30-meter-high golem looks like a weak little girl being slapped by a strong and powerful fan on the face. Then, the little girl turned into a parabola in everyone's eyes and flew back 200 or 300 meters. With a bang, fell into the crowd. The unlucky soldier in that piece turned into flesh without a word. Bloodshed all over the place. Everyone, including the king, felt a bit stiff in their necks, but they slowly turned their heads and looked at the golem in the distance. This is a Big Mac weighing more than 10,000 tons. Now he was slapped and slapped a few hundred meters. Part 1. Chapter 149. This monster. How strong is the power? The king's eyelids jumped. Fortunately, I didn't harass him up close. Otherwise, if you get this slap, it will directly become a piece of paper. The soldiers were also stunned, and even if there were spiritual resistance spells, they couldn't help but step back a few steps. The extremely huge golem can no longer bring them a sense of security. Your Majesty, let's retreat. Let others block this monster. Give me enough time. Only that magic can defeat this dragon. Fernando also realized that this dragon is not new to the ancient dragon. Ordinary attacks will not work at all. Procrastination is only a dead end. Okay, listen everyone. Stop this strange dragon for me, the king shouted. Later, he was taken by Fernando, and a few flashes opened the distance from Shillong. The soldiers around, even though they were blessed with the spell of spiritual courage, they were still a little embarrassed at this time. But they had to bite the bullet. However, they have not waited for a few steps. They saw that the body of the strange dragon in front of him suddenly shot out dense white lights. All the soldiers who were irradiated immediately fell into a negative state. Body weakness, dizziness, nausea. Some weak ones fell directly to the ground. The fainting passed, and some were incontinence of urine and bowels, and the smell was so foul for a while. Around Shillong, tens of thousands of soldiers fell to the ground like they were cutting wheat. Damn it, what a curse! Seeing this, the legendary priest immediately realized that the opponent had cast a curse spell. He quickly chanted the spell. Group expulsion. Large expanses of golden light emerged from the void, illuminating the entire legion. The negative bad state is slightly dispelled. The soldiers gradually regained their energy, but they were far from fighting. Fighting power is not 1 in 10. Damn, this is a legendary curse. The 9th level group expulsion can't deal with it at all. The priest was anxious, but there was no choice but to prepare a legendary expulsion spell, but it took a very long time to prepare. A total of more than 10,000 elites were defeated like this. Shillong's eyes were cast to the king, who was at least a kilometer away. If he wants to kill all the people here, it is too simple. If a nuclear is put to rest, the entire kingdom will at least be reduced by dozens of people, millions of people, or a 3-phase breathing down. It is estimated that the entire kingdom will die. The entire city will turn into a ghostly ghost, or lighter. He can also achieve the goal of quickly clearing the ants with these abilities, using the scorching field and the breath of the evil spirit. But these were not what he wanted. He just wanted to achieve his goal as quickly as possible this time. Doesn't want to cause too many killings. If you kill too much, you will lose yourself under your own power, and become a monster that can only use force, not brains. Although he has now faintly developed in this direction, but he still must learn to restrain. Your Majesty, you should run away by yourself. I need time. Now the spell is in the preparation phase. If we stop halfway, we will lose our only chance to defeat the dragon. Fernando said. I know. I'll beg you. I will cooperate with the army and try my best to hold the dragon. The king nodded clearly. With a move, he jumped directly into the sky. He's a fighter, flying in the air. This is all thanks to the legendary flying shoes at his feet. The speed of the king's flight was extremely fast, reaching at least 7 or 80 meters per second. He flew quickly to the right, trying to stay away from Fernando, but he just flew out 100 meters. Shillong, who had been locked in the corner of his eyes, suddenly opened the dragon wings slightly, and the strange wing tail sprayed out a red gold flame. Then, our dear king only saw the other party disappear in place. Once again, turned into a stream of red gold. Everything that stands in the way, whether it's a person or a house, is like loose sand and will be broken when touched. Everything was smashed into pieces. Blood fog and dust filled the sky of the entire battlefield. King Root had no time to react, but just dodged to the side according to instinct. The streamer flew past him, and the strong wind blew his body like a blade. He was like a puppet and was lifted out. Before he stabilized, the streamer turned back quickly and unreasonably. Hit him again. As it approached, the king could only watch a paw getting closer and closer. Snapped. He seemed to have been hit by an iron plate, only to let out a painful cry. He was held firmly in his paws by the opponent, like a mouse. Only the head is exposed. Immediately afterwards, Shillong made an emergency stop and stopped the car after crashing into several houses. Plow a ditch 7 or 8 meters deep, nearly 10 meters wide, and hundreds of meters long. Look, who did I catch? A chubby golden pickup? I jumped so happily just now, why don't I jump now? Shillong's indeterminate golden particle stream pupils looked at each other mockingly. The king's complexion was flushed at this time, and his expression was extremely complex, with anger, annoyance, remorse, and fear. He did not expect that he was a legend in front of this strange dragon. He was actually vulnerable like an ordinary person. The opponent's fast speed can be achieved without any harsh conditions. This monster, existence beyond the limit of his imagination. He glanced at the army in the distance. The ordinary soldiers were still weak, supporting each other one by one. The legendary priest was chanting a spell and seemed to be preparing to use the legendary exorcism magic to expel the bad state for the soldiers. The sharpshooter also gave up useless shooting when the king was caught. Fernando, who was given high hopes by him, did not stop casting spells, and the dark magic around him gathered more and more. Well, as long as Fernando's spells are still being used, then he did not fail. Evil dragon, kill me. You will fall here too. The king took a deep breath Wuxia and forced his breath. Although he was scared in his heart, he must never let others see it. This is the dignity of being a legendary king. It is his pride. Innocent guy, you don't seem to understand my strength. You still have some unrealistic fantasies. It's so sad. Your weakness limits your horizons. Just let me Shillong Soderbergh. Let you see that this is enough to destroy all miracles. The power to destroy all living beings. Use your barren brain and feel it. This will be the honor of your life. Soren said to the king with pity, then flapped his wings, slowly flying to the sky. He flew so slowly that everyone could clearly see the sight of him slowly lifting into the air. Part 1, Chapter 150, 100 meters, 200 meters, 500 meters, 1,000 meters, flew to thousands of meters of clouds. Shillong flapped his wings, and the strong wind blown out the clouds. What do you want to do? Show your ability to fly? It's ridiculous. The king sneered. Of course not. I just want to tell you that my compassion is nothing but the power to destroy you all in the blink of an eye. But it is not used for you. Keep your eyes open. Next is the ultimate power that the gods will tremble. Shillong said quietly, and then the scales on his chest cracked irregularly. The chest and abdomen are high. The red, golden light radiated to the surroundings. Some originally wanted to follow Shillong, but were limited by the flying height of the griffin. The elite flying a kilometer below Shillong had to close their eyes. The high-altitude light attracted everyone on the ground. The soldiers of the army couldn't help but worry about their king. Some ordinary people who were several kilometers away, or even dozens of kilometers away, just watched curiously. They felt that the light was extremely beautiful. Silum took a deep breath. The fierce air current flows back into the mouth. His abdomen is high. A group of extremely hot energy gathered inside his body. The king, who was caught in his hands, clearly felt that the temperature around him was rising dramatically. Use your fighting spirit to improve your resistance. Afterwards, he saw Shillong suddenly raise his head, and a dazzling red golden sphere shot into the distance. Almost just in the blink of an eye, the red gold sphere fell on a clearing. In an instant, endless light burst out. The king couldn't use his own words to describe what kind of shock it was. He felt like he had come from a dark world to a world of melting fire that was over 100 temperatures. Surprisingly bright and dazzling. Uncontrollable eyes feel tingling. He instinctively wanted to close his eyes, but the next moment, a ring on his hand flashed light, eliminating this discomfort for him. His vision temporarily turned grayish-white. The bright flames spread wildly around, and large black clouds rose up like a mushroom cloud. It seems to have a weird sense of beauty. The flame is so white that it is flawless. It washed away the clouds in the sky. A huge hole is formed. From a distance, it looks like a donut. He seemed to be watching a black and white pantomime with the birth of the mushroom cloud. The white light slowly faded, and the red-gold flame stream began to spread from the outside of the mushroom cloud with the shock wave. The ground is like sand and rock, being pushed away layer by layer along with the dust. Entrapped in the flames, it spreads wildly with the shock wave. The smoke and dust are increasing. The shock wave seems to be getting closer and closer. The impact did not stop until they were more than 10 kilometers away from Xinglan City, and the gray mist flew toward the sky and then fell. For a long time, a rumbling of thunder finally reached everyone's ears. It's like a roaring. His Majesty was silent. He knew that this was caused by the previous explosion. The explosion sounded 50 or 60 kilometers away from here. It actually reached his ears. What a terrible fact is this. The king dared not think about it. He was led by Shillong and flew slowly towards the center of the explosion, looking at the gray, cumulus clouds in the sky slowly falling. Coming closer, the king could clearly and directly feel the power of Shillong's breath just now. I saw a huge pit 100 meters deep and 1 or 2 kilometers in diameter on the originally flat ground below. On the periphery of this pit, there is a pit with a depth of 10 to 20 meters and a diameter of nearly 10 kilometers. This was blasted out by the shock wave. The heat here seems to have not completely dissipated, and being grasped by Shillong, the king, who is a kilometer above the sky, still feels a wave of heat rushing toward his face. The surrounding air was twisted and sticky. The fiery red lava in the pit rolls and jumps. It was only at this moment that the king's mind remembered why the two crazy soldiers who had been driven away by him before were so afraid of Shillong, and what they describe as the god of doom, the meaning of destroying the dragon, and what Shillong just said to him, destroy all miracles, destroy all living beings. This is by no means a lie. You have to thank me for my kindness. Golden Pika, Shillong finally said again. As a good metal dragon, I will give you another chance. You must cherish it. Give you another 30 days. If you can't give me the compensation I deserve, next time, my breath will bloom in your Shillong city. And you, it will be the culprit that caused everyone to die. After Shillong finished speaking, a smile came out of his mouth. In the eyes of the king, evil is incomparable. Slightly loosening his paw, the king didn't react and fell straight down. After falling more than 10 meters, he stood in the air, stabilized his figure, and silently looked at Shillong. Okay, I'm leaving. I don't need to say more about the rest. I believe you should know how to do it. Remember, only 30 days. This is my last kindness, Shillong said. The body turned, in a roar, turned into a stream of pure gold, and went away. After the king left Shillong, he just quietly looked at the back of the other person leaving, as if lost in thought. For a long time, hanging far behind Shillong, the few sky knights who were not weakened by the radiation also arrived. When they saw the pothole, they were silent. Soon, Fernando also arrived. His physical condition was not good. He just interrupted the 11th level legendary spell he had prepared for a long time, and suffered serious injuries. It was only then that he was late. He frowned and looked at the pothole. Take a breath of heat. Is this caused by the dragon? Yes. The king turned his head and said silently, his voice particularly hoarse. Fernando was speechless. How powerful is this? Even if his 11th level spell is fully used, it is still far worse than this. This is no longer an enemy that mortals can deal with. And, Yu reading www.yukangshu. This dragon is definitely not an ordinary dragon. Perhaps it is the legendary dragon species mentioned only in ancient books? The strongest dragon that can rival the gods as long as it grows to a certain limit? Fernando couldn't help thinking of the materials he had seen in ancient books before. Even with the power of the whole country, it may not be able to defeat this kind of enemy. With a slight sigh, Fernando said, accept his request, we have no choice. Seeing that the other party had let the king go, Fernando knew what the other party meant without asking. The king glanced at Fernando, a little bloodshot in his eyes, and his breath was very depressed. It has been more than 10 years since inheriting the throne of the previous generation of kings. He hasn't been as aggrieved as he is now.
Thanks for watching. You can find the next videos in the playlist linked in the info card or directly on my channel. And as always, if you have any feedback, feel free to share it in the comments too.